Thank you.
Good start, Mayor.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the regular meeting for the Board of Trustees for April 12th, 2022. Is there a motion to open the meeting? Trustee Casal, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. If you can see, some of us are virtual, some of us are in person. With the technology, it should be fine. We should be able to work this way. The rules for how to participate in a meeting virtually are on our website and attached to the agenda. And certainly for the people who are there, they can, when it's courtesy of the floor, they certainly, when they want to speak during the public hearing, they certainly can raise their hand. So the first order of business is our 2022-2023 tentative budget. We have to have a public hearing on this matter, although we've had a public workshop on it. We must do the public hearing. Is there a motion to open the public hearing? Trustee Rosenberg, second. Trustee Rosen Asher, all in favor. The public hearing is officially open, and I see Jeff has got his presentation ready. So at this stage, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff.
I think, yeah, Melissa's gonna do a little introduction.
Yes, actually, Mr. Mayor, board, residents, this is Melissa Ferraro, village administrator for the Village of Dobbs Ferry. With regards to the tentative budget that was filed on March 21st, 2022, this is a public hearing relating to that tentative budget. The final budget shall be adopted on or before May 1st, which we anticipate being considered and adopted during the April 26th, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting. This year, we presented another conservative budget and continue to scrutinize every penny spent. This tentative budget consists of estimates of revenues and expenditures based on past and current results, estimated trends to try to account for the possibility of slowing or lower assessment, and incorporates increased capital needs. This tentative budget balances increased costs with the least impact possible to taxpayers in the village, considering increased employee benefit costs, increased costs of goods and services, and ever increasing capital costs, such as maintaining our municipal buildings, streets, and fields. This tentative budget keeps the tax rate at one of the lowest amongst the Rivertown villages. We again thank all of the department heads as they work closely with the village administrator, the treasurer's office, and the village officials to present a very tight and challenging budget. The village continues to face an environment that demands increased services, and we will continue to work hard to present the lowest budgets possible in an effort to seek the highest level of service for the residents of Dobbs Ferry at the most effective cost. The commitment of both the elected officials and the village staff is to ensure the health, safety, and quality of life of our residents. I will now turn it over to Jeff Chuda, the village treasurer, for the presentation on the budget.
Thank you, Melissa. So I'm going to start with a summary of the 2022-23 budget. We are proposing total appropriations of $22,703,094 across the operating and enterprise funds. This represents an increase of $1.1 million over the 2021-22 budget. The proposed 2022-23 tax levy is $15,634,900, which represents an increase of $775,000 or excuse me, or 4.69% over the 2021-22 budget. The taxable assessed value of all properties within the village increased approximately $100 million this year, which has allowed the village to propose a minimal tax rate cut. The proposed tax rate is $7.08 per $1,000 of assessed value compared to last year's $7.09. This slide shows the tax levy change for the past 15 years. Since its inception, the village has complied with New York State's tax cap legislation. And once again, this year we comply with the tax cap. We try very hard to balance taxes with the many costly but important services that the village provides, such as police, fire, road maintenance, and garbage pickup that our residents have come to expect. New York state law dictates how much municipalities can increase their tax levies from one year to the next. For 2022-23, the village has proposed a tax levy of $15,634,900, which is compliant with New York State tax cap law. Again, with this budget, we were able to slightly lower the tax rate to $7.08 per $1,000 of assessed value. This slide shows the taxable value over the past 14 years. We discussed the increase for 2022-23 with the assessor to gain a better understanding of the change in assessment. It is a complicated process. However, there are several reasons the assessed value increased year over year. A couple of larger influences of that increase include the updated town-wide revaluation completed in 2021, which showed an overall increase due to the property market and strong building and renovation work as evidenced by building permits issued. Taxpayers have benefited from the valuation trending up for the past 8 years. The uptick in property valuation has helped maintain a very stable tax rate for the past several years. The village continues to provide all the expected village services within the restraints of a conservative budget. And as you'll see on the next slide, the Dobbs Ferry Village tax rate continues to be one of the lowest in the river towns villages. Village administration has worked together for many years to bring the residents a high level of services at one of the lowest tax rates in the river towns. And with this budget, we continue to do so. As we'll see on the next 2 slides, employee benefits costs continue to be a significant expense to the village. On this slide, we see budgeted costs for employee retirement costs. Retirement system costs can vary from year to year due to fluctuations in areas such as the economy, the stock market, and state mandates or requirements. The rates could continue to trend upward in the future. However, we continue to see the retirement of some longtime village employees who are replaced with personnel in one of the retirement tiers that requires larger contributions from employees and a much lower village contribution to the retirement system for those employees. For the upcoming year, we anticipate a continuation of the trend of healthcare costs upward. However, we have continued to try to contain these costs to the village going forward. In recently settled contract negotiations, we were able to get higher employee contributions to healthcare costs as new employees progress through their career at the village and into retirement. These employee contributions are starting to improve village expense as we work to contain costs to the village taxpayers. This slide shows expenditures by group. Employee costs in the form of payroll and benefits continue to be the highest village expenditure and represent 66% of this budget. This slide shows the allocation of costs basically by function or by the department, along with debt and benefits. Public safety is one of the largest components of the village budget. And again, the expense is mostly people in the form of personnel and benefits. Non-property taxes such as sales tax collections continue to be the village's major revenue source other than the tax levy. Recent increases in the sales tax rate have proven to be a real benefit for the village. And again, this year we anticipate approximately $2.7 million in non-property tax collections. We have seen an increase in parking permits and parking meter fees. However, they've not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels. The trend of revenues and expenditures continues upward. Personnel costs once again are a large portion of the increase because of contractual cost of living adjustments and increasing cost of employee benefits. And again, we continue to work to contain all expenditures in the village budget. This slide illustrates the distribution of property taxes within the village. The largest portion of your tax bill continues to be the school district taxes at close to 69% of your total property taxes. Village provided services such as the police department, snow removal, and garbage removal remain approximately 20% of your total tax bill. The next two slides show how the general fund's unreserved fund balance has been trending for the past 16 years. Unreserved fund balance is in essence the village's savings account for unforeseen circumstances that can occur. The village will continue to work hard to keep the unreserved fund balance at a reasonable level in an effort to ensure that we provide the highest level of service to the residents of Dobbs Ferry at the best possible costs. In summary, we have proposed a budget that is once again in compliance with New York State's tax levy cap. The tax rate decreases to $7.08 per thousand of assessed value, with another increase in taxable assessed value and an increase of expenditures of just over 5%. We've been able to continue to maintain strong fund balance, and we see this in the village's Moody's rating of big A, little a2, which amounts to about the highest rating a municipality of this size can attain. And we continue to score excellently in the New York State's fiscal stress test. That said, there are future concerns, and we must continue to keep an eye on what's noted in the future concerns of this slide. And again, our goal is to provide the highest level of service to the residents of Dobbs Ferry at the best possible cost. And we feel that this budget does that. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Melissa. I also want to thank the staff for coming in with a very tight budget. I'm sure there are going to be questions. So does anybody on the board have any questions? Any comments from anybody on the board? Yes, Shari.
I think that based on what was just presented, we do need to find ways to share services and cut some of the biggest parts of this to help, because the burden felt by the taxpayer can only be, can only go up so much. So it's great that all of our property value is worth more than what we bought it for. But I think that when you look at this, there's some big examples of things that we should be looking into, looking at maybe sharing with the county to help pick up some of those costs and the costs we keep paying. So that's it.
Yes, Matt.
I strongly agree with what Shari said. We have, there's a little bit of, well, I understand that we're, decreasing the tax rate, which is the cost per thousand. But if your property value has gone up, that comment does disguise the fact that you're also going to be paying more in hard dollars, right? It's not that anybody's individual taxes is going down. It's that the cost per thousand of assessed value has gone down. So let's be clear that people will be paying more to support this budget. They'll be paying, if you don't live at the landing, you'll be paying more to subsidize the fact that the landing has offloaded their taxes, a lot of their taxes, onto the rest of the village. And we do need to find, and I know this is not like, there's not a quick solution here, but we do need to dedicate ourselves to finding ways to both increase revenue and offload some of our our tax burden. Sharing services is something that's been explored before. People were uncomfortable with it. We need to explore it again. It's absolutely imperative. Looking into the cannabis dispensaries and the tax revenue that comes from that is an absolutely necessary, fiscally responsible thing for us to do in order to mitigate both generally increasing costs and the unfair distribution of taxes based on the landing's reconstitution as a condominium complex. So I think, and I think thirdly and finally, we also need to take that attitude and see if we can inspire the school district to look into either merging with another school district or sharing services, back office services with another school district. Since the early 1970s, that has been a coming and going conversation, and research has been done around it. It absolutely needs to be done again. As Jeff said, 69 cents out of every property tax dollar goes to the school. The village is trying to contain costs. The school is probably trying to contain costs, but they face even more mandates than we do. We're a small school district. There are other small school districts in the area that can benefit together from combining systems. So we should encourage the school district. We as a board and the residents of Dobbs Ferry should also encourage the school district to look into that before Dobbs Ferry becomes an unsustainably expensive place to live. Sorry for the long speech.
No, you both make good points. And I think the shared services is something that I was thinking of maybe forming a subcommittee with a couple of the trustees, a couple of the staff, and we could look at, because Shari references the county, and that's one avenue, and then there's maybe with other nearby communities, and that's another avenue. So I think we should have a dedicated group of people who can do the groundwork, so to speak, and then come back to us and say, this seems like it's easier. At first, we could do this, whether that's even sharing paper with the town of village of Irvington, or ordering supplies with the school district. Stuff like that would be the easier way to go. And then there are the bigger issues with the different departments of Dobbs Ferry. So I think a subcommittee would be the way to go. This way we don't lose track of it, and then we can move forward from there. So I think, Melissa, if we could just make a note of that and we could work on that, I think that would be the way to go as well. And I know that cannabis, the majority, I believe the majority is now in favor of it. So certainly I think we should put that. I want to look at the zoning, and Melissa, I think we should put that looking on one of the future forward agendas as well, because things are very tight. There's no question about that.
I'd like to make an observation or two, if I could, Mr. Mayor, just very quickly. I don't disagree that evaluating shared services is important. I think it also is important not to lose the sense of community and the quality of services that we have in the village. That's the reason that many of the people who live in the village live here. So it's a balancing act. And I would also make the observation, I do want to compliment Jeff and Melissa and the staff on getting this done. It is not the role of the annual budgeting process, but Mr. Mayor, as you point out, the role of the board longer term to think about things like that strategically. So while it's appropriate to make an observation that it would be a good thing now, it's not a criticism of the budget process, at least not in my mind, because it isn't up to Jeff and Melissa. It's really up to us to think about how to strike that balance.
No criticism implied or intended.
Any other trustee have anything else they would like to comment on?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, but I just like to add, a thank you to Melissa and Jeff and to the department heads who have done consistently such a good job of really paring down their expenses to what they need. I mean, we got a couple of wish lists, but nothing was, out of the ordinary or extravagant. And when we had to pare down, they were fine with it. So I really want to thank the department heads for their cooperation and their dedication to the village.
Yes, for sure. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public. If the trustees have anything else? I don't know, is there anyone there in person who'd like to speak? Since I can't see, so someone could tell me yes, no?
That's a no.
Okay, and is there anybody from the public who's virtually would like to speak? Please raise your hands. Jennifer, I'm assuming there's nobody?
I thought you were looking. No, I'm sorry, there's nobody. Sorry. There's nobody raising their hand.
Okay, so if there's no further comments, I take a motion to, look, before I close the public hearing, I just want to say that there can be some slight changes in the final budget. And in fact, even after we pass the budget, we can still make amendments to make the changes as they arise. So, and I know that in his report, Jeff mentions the parking permits and other possible sources of revenue from non-taxable sources. So we will continue to look at that as well. So is there a motion to close the public hearing? Trustee Patino, second trustee Sullivan, all in favor. Public hearing is now closed. We can continue to take comments in writing, and we'll put this on at the next Board of Trustee meeting, and we'll vote on the budget at that time. So thank you, everybody, for your input and involvement in this. Moving on to appointments. We appointed Dan Romer to be the head of the building department, but I think we must also appoint him to be the land use officer. So we have to resolve that today. So is there a motion to consider appointing Dan Romer as the land use officer? Trustee Taylor, second trustee Patino, all in favor? And that passes unanimously. Welcome, Dan. Are you still there?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, maybe you could tell us very briefly, what is a land use officer?
It gives me the right to review the plans and send them to the proper boards and stuff. In charge of the review process.
Okay,
For
sounds
the
good.
permits
Okay.
and the zoning and.
You're too modest, Dan.
It's, yeah. A number of years ago, Mayor, the code was revised to eliminate the intake of land use applications by committee. And for the years thereafter, your former building inspector served in this role as land use officer, which you've added to your code. So you designate the land use officer, and because traditionally it's been the building inspector who does the intake. It's an analysis to be sure the applications are complete and then to refer them to the appropriate boards.
Thank you for clarifying that for the public.
Got
it. Okay, so that's done. Next item is I'm going to announce the appointments of Simona Connor to the Beautification Committee and the Sustainability Task Force, each for a term of 1 year, as recommended by the nominating committee. I want to thank Simona for volunteering for not one, but 2 committees. I know she's a new resident, and we're looking forward to her involvement in the village. So welcome. Next item is a presentation by Sustainable Westchester. Are they in person or virtual?
It should be virtual.
Yeah.
Promoting natural journalists right now. Nick, can you hear us?
Yes, hello. Can you hear and see me now? Or
Yes.
hello. All right. Thank you, Mayor and trustees, for having me here. I'll just share my screen and get into it. So my name's Nick Tedrow. I'm with Sustainable Westchester, and I'm the operations manager for the Westchester Power program. And for anyone out there who doesn't know, Sustainable Westchester is a nonprofit consortium whose members are 44 of the 45 municipalities in Westchester County, including Dobbs Ferry, of course. And speaking of shared services, that's what we serve to the municipalities who want to participate in the various programs and initiatives that we run to advance sustainable and renewable energy initiatives. So as soon as my keyboard unlocks here, I'll move forward. All right, so Westchester Power is a community resource aggregation program, and we are an electricity supply program for participating municipalities in the county. So of the 44 municipalities that are part of Sustainable Westchester, 29 with the launch of Yonkers this last month is where we're at now, with a rough customer account load between residential and small business accounts now of about 145,000. We're here as a sustainability organization and running this program primarily to advance renewable clean energy in the county and help move towards our various goals around the CLCPA at the state and build this healthy future. So in terms of that end, with CO2 emissions, we've, as a county-wide level, mitigated roughly 1.1 million metric tons of CO2, and in more tangible terms, you can see there the rough correlation in cars taken off the road per year and trees planted and grown for 10 years. And again, you can see Dobbs Ferry's contribution to that. So making significant impact for sure, and of course, looking to continue to build upon that going here into the future. So in terms of the rates for the electricity supply that we offer through our program, this snapshot graph here shows the whole program history from 2016 to now, with those blue vertical lines being Con Edison's rate, and then our horizontal lines there are standard and renewable rates, which are fixed and why they're relatively the same throughout history, accounting for the slight changes when we have new contracts. And Con Ed has the variable rates. And you might notice this big giant bar sticking out here in January is when we all had sticker or shock on our Con Edison bills with the spike we saw, not just electricity supply, but the delivery of the gas. So for folks who were in our program at that time, they didn't experience that spike on the electricity supply portion of their bill. So you can see there up here at the top, those are the current rates right now for the program that are fixed in this contract through June 30th, the 100% renewable, 7.41 cents per kilowatt hour, and the standard supply, 6.75. And this contract has been going on since January 1st of last year. So looking at the rates compared to Con Edison on an unweighted average through the existence of the program and or since Dobbs Ferry joined, which is the existence of the program, and our current contract, you can see here on the right, since the launch, we have trailed a little bit behind the Con Edison average on a cents per kilowatt hour average, and then this current contract, we've performed very well. So, and then sort of having the more holistic perspective about it, we're bringing renewable energy to the table, whereas Con Edison is just giving and providing the cheapest on the market mixed fossil fuel dirty supply that they can buy. So we're really having a lot of success collectively through our participating municipalities and the work we're doing in bringing renewable energy at a cost-effective manner to scale for our communities. So great job, everybody. So looking forward now, we're in an evolutionary phase where we're trying to really expand and maximize the impact long term of our environmental effect and economic value for residents and small businesses in the county. And so we're sort of evolving into a Westchester Power 2.0, where these first handful of years have been our 1.0, sort of getting off the ground and solidifying things phase. So that's going to constitute increasing our supplier pool, so we have even more competition. Obviously, competition is a good thing in our structure where we're going out and running competitive bids for our contracts, building capacity and a toolkit internally here where we can support longer term contracts and do more flexible and diverse things with going to the market and when times are really good and buying off chunks maybe on lower price times, offering different rate structures, things like that. that will be important to stay relevant going forward into the future. And then in turn, that's going to really just bring a lot of stability to the pricing as we go forward. And then also, hopefully, in the not too distant future, enable us to really invest and develop renewable energy construction projects locally that'll directly deliver, green energy to our communities and bring associated benefits with that kind of development to communities. So in the current structure, how we go and secure an electricity contract, this 1.0 model here in the box, we invite ESCOs to come on our auction day and bid on our aggregate customer load. So right now, or as it stands in the state, the only folks who have the authority to serve retail customers are ESCOs or utilities themselves, which is limiting in a couple ways. One, not all of the energy producers in the state actually have an ESCO authority. It doesn't fit their business interests or whatever. So instead of folks who are actually ESCOs and can provide that full retail offering. And then furthermore, we have a really large aggregation. So we have to, we can't just take any of the, smaller companies out there. We really need to make sure we have a company who's large enough and reliable to handle our large aggregation. So those are some limiting factors that have always existed. Now, especially in these times with the rise in pricing, it's squeezing a lot of those energy companies. So we have to really emphasize strategies to expand our potential supplier pool. So to that end, what we're planning for in this first step into the 2.0 phase is trying to expand into the wholesale market. So energy costs, 50% or somewhere around there more of the cost for that full retail product is the actual energy itself. So that's a huge chunk of the pie that we don't currently, solicit for with a lot of the energy producers who are out there in the state. So what we want to do is try and tap into that. So we have a firm that we're contracting with who can offer us what we're calling a sleeving service. Basically, they have the authority to act as an ESCO and can bring all of those auxiliary pieces that go with the actual energy supply itself to form an actual retail product. So what we'll do in this next phase here, in this 2.0 new auction process, is run the same full retail ESCO auction that we would normally do. Invite those companies who want to come out, those ESCOs, and bid on that to do that, as we always have. Then on the same day, we'll run a wholesale auction where we'll bring just wholesalers to an auction and have them bid just on that energy supply portion. And then at the end of the day, we can assess those results from both those auctions and compare our best ESCO price through that auction for the full retail to what we're seeing in the best price for the wholesale auction, and being able to add in our known sleeving costs to make that full retail offering. We can pick the best option from that point. And so obviously the point of doing this is to increase the supplier pool. As I said, we're also understanding more, growing our toolkit and our knowledge internally here at Sustainable Westchester about the wholesale markets, and just really growing in a lot of ways to stay up to speed with what's happening in the energy market and grow. So we definitely think this is going to be an imperative for us going forward, and is a first step towards a lot of these advancements we're aiming at. So right now, what we're recommending with the looming end of this contract here in 2.5 months or so is to extend the current contract. So one reason for this is to give a little more space and time for us to prepare for this enhanced auction process that we want to run. We're still, putting all of the pieces in place for that. So that wouldn't be ready to go right now with the timeline constraints we have. So we're hoping to give a little space to allow that to develop and get really set up. And we'll have to update some of the RFP language and share that back around to suppliers who are engaged and active with us and want to participate, and include language around the sleeving arrangement. But then also we want to hopefully move through, at least to some extent, this current activity in the world that's causing a lot of risk and uncertainty in pricing. Obviously, we're seeing volatility in a lot of markets, inflation pricing and the rest. So the gas and oil prices are obviously front and center on that front as well. So when we've been looking at indicatives over the past couple months, and now, the reality is we're getting a lot of pricing that actually bakes in uncertainty. So we're hoping that if things progress a little bit in the world, things improve in Ukraine, et cetera, we can maybe move to a more stable and look for a long-term contract when pricing isn't reflecting a lot of this risk and uncertainty out there. So we've got approval from DPS for up to a 6-month extension, and the indicatives we've seen for the most part now suggest that 5 months looks like the best or sweet spot. So, that's what we're eyeing right now, but obviously an extension isn't going to be an extension at our current rates, which are far below where the market's at right now. It's going to be significantly higher than the current contract. And there's your proof where it's going up, but, just a visual. So we're looking at a timeline here for the contract extension of trying to execute MOUs. So that's what I'm here proposing, obviously, is authorization for an MOU from the board to sign of a new price not to exceed, which we'll touch on here in just a minute. And then we would go forward with that and contract with the supplier immediately after we can secure those MOUs and get that price point to then reach out for everyone to execute ESAs for that. So then we would just be on a normal timeline. We'd have to do a normal opt-out mailing as we always do for compliance. Since there's a price change, that opt-out period would end. Then July 1, we're rolling with the prices for that extension period if it's 4 to 5 to 6 months. And then after that, we sort of roll into this whole process again in mid-August, where we're coming back and talking about a new price not to exceed, getting sign off on a new MOU, and then running the auction process. And down the line, December 1, a new long-term contract with these amazing prices with this really clever process we've worked out. So that's what we're looking at and proposing right now, and hoping to get your support for. So just to give a little bit of orientation about the market right now before we talk about the actual price, and I stop talking. Natural gas is the predominant fuel and the driver of where electricity pricing goes in the market today. So as of now, gas futures have doubled since the time we executed this last auction and contract back at the end of 2020 that we're currently in. So thinking about gas, as I mentioned, or the energy portion being about half of the full electricity price, doubling the gas futures alone is a 50% retail increase. So looking at our standard price that we're currently with of 6.7 cents from 2020, 50% of that increase is already over 10 cents. So times are incredibly different than they were at the time we were doing all of this in the last go around in 2020. And there's no sign that this is going to ease up. There's stress with sanctions on Russia, who's a big supplier of gas to Europe, and a huge demand vacuum there that's been created that the U.S. is intending to fill by increasing liquid natural gas exports, where Europe will pay an arm and a leg for it. So until things change to some extent in the world, there's really just no sign of any upward pressure in the immediate term relenting. So this also orients to the rec pricing, the renewable energy credits. In our current contract, we got those locked in at a price point of 0.6 cents per kilowatt hour. In the most recent solicitations we did before this one we're doing now, the NYSEG contract in Yonkers, we got 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour pricing on the rec, and now it's going up even beyond that. So some reasons for that, similarly the markets and all the things we just talked about, and then sort of the escape of RECs into other markets where folks are coming into the New York market, buying up RECs and selling them elsewhere. So there's a lot of things that are pushing the REC market prices up as well. So just a little orientation again here about what's going on out there. Similar deals you can find on the New York State Power to Choose site that are renewable products, 100% renewable products with fixed rates. You're saying 13, 14 cents here for those prices. And then looking at, a specific, provider's site and going in and trying to punch in those numbers and get a deal directly on one of the most competitive pricing offers out there, you're still in the 13.5 cents range. So it's just a whole paradigm shift of where we've been pretty much since the existence of this program. Anyway, so lastly here, just looking at the indicatives we've been tracking since the beginning of the year. These are representative indicative 1, indicative 2 of 2 different suppliers that are out there. And then this unhighlighted here being the 5-month mark. When we settled on our price not to exceed that we proposed to folks, we were looking at our March 23rd indicatives and seeing price points of 9.94 cents with the 1.82 rec adder that rolled up to roughly 11.6 here. And even since then, looking at the March 30th indicatives we got, that already went up a little bit to 12.03, that combined price. So that's all led us to propose a 12.5 cent not to exceed price per kilowatt hour. That's compatible with the margin of growth we've seen in the indicatives, the decline in the price over the course of time. So, where we expect to be at the point we can execute an ESA, we think we'll be at about this range, and 12.5 could be an achievable target. We experienced something really similar with this contract extension in the NYSEG contract that ended towards the end of last year, where the market was moving rapidly on us due to IDA and some other stuff that was going on in the world at that time. But we got to a position where we had an MOU that had a price not to exceed signed on with all the municipalities up there. That was actually not executable by the time we got to the point where we were able to contract with a supplier. It just was out of reach. So that was a huge, letdown, as we had to pause the program. We couldn't stay on target to reset and have a contract follow up on the end of that one. Huge communications mess. Homeowners got switch letters from the utility, and then notices from us, and then had to get opt-out letters about the program restarting. It was just a whole mess. And then on top of that, the timing of that was in the winter when prices skyrocketed and the program wasn't there and active to provide that cap for folks. So it was a really bad situation. And it was a situation where communities felt abandoned and the program wasn't there to help insulate some of that price spike for folks who were in our program. So, a lot of those value features were lost and were what at stake here with, not moving forward with the extension, we think, and having the flexibility to switch between supplies and continued access to renewable energy and stable rate options. So I will end it there and pass the mic back to you all.
For the benefit of the public, can you just make clear about how they can opt out, how when we go forward with this, the residents are already, in essence, already registered, but if they want to opt out, they can opt out, and what the process is like?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're talking about folks who are currently in the program, you're going to be getting a letter from Sustainable Westchester with Dobbs Ferry's seal on it, and some pretty clear indication like, hey, you should open this. And it'll have the details about what the ultimate price we are able to settle at the contractor is, and giving you the directions on how to opt out. So if you want to do that, so there's a 30-day opt-out period built into this buffer where you can respond to us and make sure that you're out of the program before these rates take effect on July 1. And to be clear, you can opt out of the program or opt back in anytime you want, but this notification period is specifically meant to make sure and ensure that you can exit the program before new rates take effect if that's what you want to do. So when that time comes and you get that letter, you can call us, you can go online and do it yourself through our online form, you can email us. There's a myriad, those are basically the main ways, but they're all pretty convenient and easy to do.
I don't know if you could talk to this, but has it been your experience where people have opted out and they get these great introductory offers from some ESCOs, and then you see within a few months or sooner, perhaps, these large escalations? Have you seen that? Is that a problem? Is that an issue?
Yeah, I think, that's something I've heard about I've heard a lot of homeowners and residents talk about, a lot of folks don't even know they're with Escrow. Sometimes they've gotten slammed into a contract and that's happened to them. But some people do sort of, go into an agreement with a fixed price that has a cap term, so 12, 18 months, whatever. But then at the end of that term, they move into a variable rate with that supplier. And then their costs kind of, float up and down based on that. And they can be paying something a lot of the months of the year where it's way beyond what they had signed up for originally with the fixed price that they got as the introductory price to that agreement. So that's not uncommon, and I've heard that a lot. So through relatively little experience at the organization here, but certainly something that seems like it's a common theme.
Okay, thanks. Matt?
Yeah, can you just clarify something for people inclusive of me? And that is
Sure.
that you described the cost of natural gas as being a huge driver in the increased cost of power. You guys are renewable, which means I presume that you do not, no energy that's flowing through Sustainable Westchester is natural gas. But are you suggesting that even though, it's, I presume, wind and solar primarily that you're giving us access to, that it's just the overall energy market sees prices going up, and so your suppliers are chasing those prices even though they are not using natural gas, and so their fixed costs are not going up, they're just profit taking as a function of market conditions?
So the way that the renewable energy supply for New York State works is we're actually buying credits of renewable energy through the state market that tracks it. So there's and where we're at currently, there's a lot less renewable energy generation in the state than there is other, which is mostly the natural gas portion. So we're actually, through our program, when it's New York State hydropower represented through these renewable energy credits. So when we go out and do the auction, and contractor A is awarded the contract, they go out and they buy the requisite representative amount of these credits from the pool through the state to match our need for the program. So that's like a stacked cost because they're still supplying their energy to the market for us, but then we have to represent the renewable energy through these credits. It's a convoluted thing to explain through a presentation here, but and I'm sure it gets confusing fast if I get too far into it for the public, for sure. But yeah, it's not as straightforward as like we have until we develop more and more of it comes online in the state to have just like direct renewable energy producers who are producing enough in the state to make that sort of shift that balance.
So these are basically, you're saying these are basically carbon offset credits that is what's being traded?
Yeah, you could think of it that way, I guess, similar to maybe how a company would represent their carbon offset through a credit market. So that's currently the constrained way that we have to operate, or anyone has to operate right now, until there's more development of renewables put online. Some things change structurally.
Thank you.
So yeah, they go out and they buy all of the megawatt hour credits we need for our program to represent every person who's a 100% renewable energy user. So they're still, yes, directly buying and supporting renewable energy. It's just not as straightforward as we would like it to be.
Any other questions or comments by the board? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation, and the resolution is on number 1 item, so we'll get to it and we'll address the issue at the time.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Let's move to courtesy of the floor. Is there anybody there who'd like to address the board?
Yes, Mr. Steinschneider.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Board. Here tonight, Patty Steinschneider, 329 Broadway, Dobbs Ferry, New York, 10522. I'm wearing two hats tonight. The first as the representative to the village from the Chamber of Commerce. We see that you've got parklets on the agenda. I think it's at the bottom, and I'm anticipating that in your discussion, you're not looking for public input at that point. So what we wanted to just do is make sure that we had kind of reiterated the concerns that we have and the position we think would be beneficial to the village. We do have two letters that I'll drop off to the village administrator now for the board members. One's from the Rivertown Chamber of Commerce. The other is from New York State and supports what we're talking about. We really urge that you take, we know how careful you're being about this and how concerned you are with the fiscal issues and everything else. We're adopting budgets, and it hasn't been easy this last couple of years, but we really want to make sure that people are understanding that the parking spaces that are being used as parklets, they're doing tremendous things to support our local businesses that are taking advantage of them, but also it's bringing a lot of vitality and energy and interest to the downtown. So I think it's in time when we can use extra energy in the downtown, it's a really good way to do it. We did an analysis of our own trying to figure out, and I don't know how Jeff does this stuff because it's really complicated. He makes it sound so easy. But what we came up with was that the actual income from the parking spaces is around a little bit less than $83 a month per space. And that really would only come into play at the time that all the spaces were occupied. And of course, the meters are during the day, not during the evening, when we really have the biggest issue with parking. So we're hoping that you can, take that into consideration when you, do your deliberations on this and figure out where we're going to go in terms of what the fair cost should be to the people who would like to use the parklets to bring that energy to the downtown. Second hat, unless you have any questions about that, is as a member of the Ferry Festa Committee. We've had one meeting, which the village administrator, who's brought another whole bunch of vitality to our downtown and our village, which I really appreciate. And she reached out to us and said, let's meet and talk about this thing you guys call Festa. And we kind of gave her a lay of the land. I think she thinks it looks really interesting, but I think she needs to see one in person to really appreciate it. And I know it's April, but October 1st will come very quick. And I just want to make sure that we get on an agenda, one of the next couple of meetings, that we can have the board do whatever it needs to do to authorize us to have our block party and to confirm the date. We're looking at October 1st. And I think Melissa wants to say something.
I do. It was discussed a couple of meetings ago, and there's no action necessary by the board. So it's good to go.
Is that the other thing that's for discussion, that you're being given all the authority for block parties? And you can just have a festival whenever you want one?
I'm sorry. You have to apply for the block party, but yes.
The date is.
Do that. The date is confirmed.
Excellent.
Yes, the date has been announced, but you have
Okay.
to apply.
Now, just don't tell my wife that this is happening again, okay? So I'll give you the letters, and thank you, unless anybody has a question.
Anybody else who's there?
Jessica Gaylor
Nope,
has her
that's
hand
it.
raised.
So just so I'm in person, where there's nobody else in
So
person?
that we're all set. That's it. I'm sorry, this,
Is this courtesy of?
it is. Would you like to speak?
I don't want to really be on camera.
I'm sorry, you don't have a choice.
I said, I'm sorry, I don't really want to be on camera.
I know, but you don't have a choice. If you would like to speak, we can't turn the cameras off.
Well, we have 5 members at home, so yeah. And the microphone will allow you to speak to the members who are virtual, the board members.
Is there anybody else here who wants to speak?
No.
Nope.
The mayor isn't here?
He's right there.
He's at the bottom.
He's virtual.
If you don't feel comfortable speaking, you want to write a letter to the board, you can certainly write a letter.
No. I will speak.
Be prepared to give your name and your address as well.
My name is Jacqueline Vecchio, and I live at 35 Judson Avenue, Dobbs Ferry. I have a problem that I need to be immediately addressed by the board or for someone to help me out. I have an emergency situation in my home that water is coming in from the siding. I hired a contractor and I went down to Tory Lumber. The siding cannot be replaced because you can't get the wood. The wood comes from Canada, and that's where it was initially purchased from, Tory Lumber in Yonkers. So the next best thing for me to do was to go up to Newcastle in Elmsford, and they showed me a material that is very comparable to what I'm going to put up. Last Tuesday, one of the building inspectors came up and put a stop order on my door. This I am replacing, and according to the code, 204-94, the village code, I can install, maintain, and repair. So I don't know why I was given this stop order. All I know is that it's doing damage to my house, and this is not my style at all. I just want to repair my home in a workmanship-like manner. We came down, we applied for a permit or application fee. I paid the money. Last night, I viewed the Architectural Review Board, and I cannot be delayed one meeting after another. And that's what it seemed to be going on last week. I don't know. I am asking, if you don't have an emergency situation put in place, you really should. But as I said, according to the village code, 204-94, I am allowed to do this. So I would like guidance, because on my front lawn, I have all the materials and my home is being damaged. We've had 3 severe heavy rains. The floors in my home, the walls in my home are all being damaged. And all I'm trying to do is rectify the situation in a workmanlike manner with a licensed contractor. He's licensed in Westchester County and the town of Greenberg. We've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. So I don't know why this is being held up. This is an emergency situation. Thank you, and I hope you can help me.
Dan, can you shed light on this, Dan, or no?
Yes, John was out there last week and he drove by and the contractor ripped all the cedar siding off the house. And when he did that, they were proposing to put vinyl siding back on. If they were going back with the cedar siding, the same material and everything, we could have let them keep working, but they're not. They're going with a different material. So that would need AHRB approval.
You can't get the cedar siding. Everyone knows that. The siding that I picked out from Newcastle looks almost identical to the cedar. It has the grain in it. It looks almost identical, and it's going to save my house.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, we also told the contractor at that time when we stopped that he can keep working. He could tie back the house, tape it in, and make sure it's dry before he does leave the site, dried in.
Okay, so the next step is the AHRB?
Yes, she submitted an application and now it's being referred to them. We're going to get it on the next AHRB meeting if they have all their material into us. I don't know if that's all in now.
Okay.
Do you have the date of the next HRB meeting, Dan?
I
It's
don't
not till
have
the end of April.
It's the 25th, the 25th of
2
April.
weeks
Okay,
from last night.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, but the contractor can put the Tyvek up and protect the exterior, awaiting the approval from the HRB.
Correct. That's what we told him that day to make sure he's dried in before he leaves the site.
Okay. All right, Ms. Vecchio, it sounds like your house is going to be protected and then the AHRB is in 2 weeks. So it doesn't sound like any further damage will be done until the AHRB addresses the issue.
Mayor Rosillo?
Yes.
My name is spelled wrong there, but it's Vecchio, V as in Victor, E-C-C-H-I-O. The issue is, after what I saw last night on the AARB board, it seems that they put people off week after week or every 2 weeks. I can't have this. I am going to take pictures of every single room in my house, and any further damage that occurs, I'm going to go after the village for it. I hate to say that because that's not my style. But I will hire an attorney and I will go after the village for it, because this, everyone knows, and I believe that's Mr. Stone. You know very well you cannot get the cedar. You can't get the wood.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to get into an argument. I'm not going to get my blood pressure up or anything else. That's the fact of the matter is, and according to the village code, maybe people better read it again, or maybe you should put an emergency situation in. This is an emergency. We're in the height of COVID. I don't know what you expect people to do.
And Mrs. Vecchio, this is the building inspector. This is Dan Romer. He works with John Stone, who issued the stop work order. So that's who's providing you this information.
Okay,
Okay?
but
just to
Dawn,
clarify.
the contractor came up today and he's worried about the styrofoam insulation, which we told you. I didn't realize that was you, Dan. I came down today to see you because the contractor passed by and he's worried about the styrofoam insulation that he has put up already. He's worried about it. I mean, we're talking about money here. You know, money's very hard to earn. I'm on a fixed income. And money is very hard, even for him to earn. And in this economy, I really think, Dan, if it's your responsibility, there has to be some kind of an emergency clause. You can waive it if you want to. I have all the facts. I mean, you're welcome to come into my home and see the damage. Although I really don't want anybody in my home with COVID, but you know, I don't know what else to say.
Ms. Vecchio, it sounds like we're going through the appropriate process, and the AHRB is in a few weeks. So that is the process. And I'm sure Dan and your contractor can talk more about it to address certain issues.
Yes, I'll be in
Okay.
my office tomorrow morning if you'd like to stop by.
Tomorrow morning, Dan, I will stop by. I stopped by this afternoon. I spoke to Sarah. I believe she's going to tell you, you were out on an inspection when I stopped by. But I will stop by tomorrow, probably mid-morning. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Vecchio.
Sorry, I'm a little bit flustered.
Totally
My
understandable.
dog passed away also today. So I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm so sorry. Is there anybody else there who'd like to speak?
No, Mayor.
Okay, anybody virtual?
Yes, I'm gonna promote Jessica to. Jessica, can you hear us?
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Tell us who you are and where you live.
My name is Jessica Galen. I live at 333 Broadway in Dobbs Ferry.
Okay.
I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the Downtown Committee to support the communications that the Rivertown Chamber of Commerce has shared with you all, and echo what Patty was saying in terms of the parklets. Just reiterating that we've heard from a number of restaurants and downtown businesses that they are excited to have parklets again this year, that they were a really key part of ensuring their survival during COVID, which given that they are such a huge draw for our village, we want to make sure that we're doing what we can within the legal constraints that the state makes available to support them. I want to also reiterate what we've heard from a number of restaurants, that the fee, I think because of the many transitions with leadership in the village, there's been some questions about how the number is arrived at and whether it's fair and whether it's transparent and whether restaurants are being, charged unfairly for the cost of the barriers. So just ensuring that however the final price is arrived at, that it's done transparently and fairly. And I also just want to bring up that regarding concerns about taking over parking spaces in the downtown, it's the position of the downtown committee that, issues with parking and traffic in the downtown could be handled more kind of holistically, and that, reducing the number of parklets available or making it difficult for parklets to become available for restaurants won't meaningfully do anything to help parking and traffic, but that would have a significant negative impact on restaurants. So I would love to, put my committee out there and to support the village in anything that we can do to help come up with ideas around traffic and parking issue alleviation. But I hope that we can get the parklets approved and have a transparent process for applying for them and a transparent fee structure for restaurants who want them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Anybody else?
There's no one else with their hand raised, Mayor.
Okay, so let's move on to the discussion and resolution items. Discussion number 1 is a discussion of extending the competitive electric service agreement between the Village, Sustainable Westchester, and Constellation New Energy, Inc. We've had a presentation by Sustainable Westchester, and before we move forward, is there any discussion that the board would like to have before we put this to a vote?
This is just to recognize that brief 5-month period that they'll need in order to have that auction that he was describing. So this is just a continuation of the existing for no more than 5 months until they can have the auction and enter into a formal agreement.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So is there a motion to authorize the village administrator to execute the extension of the competitive electric service agreement between the Village, Sustainable Westchester, and Constellation New Energy? Okay. Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? And that passes unanimously. Discussion number 2 is a discussion of the escrow application fees. Melissa, do you want to take the lead on that?
I'm actually going to ask Lori Lee and Dan Romer to just handle this discussion.
Yes. Hi, good evening, Mayor. The current escrow fees were under review, and Dan and Valerie and myself took a look at them. And what they're proposing to do in order to change them is to make them a sliding scale depending on the extent of the review. Oftentimes the escrow deposit of $2,500, which is just a straightforward requirement in your code now, doesn't extend the entire length of the necessary review for the more complicated processes. So it burdens the building department and also Jeff, who retains those escrow funds, and it requires a lot of follow-up in order to get refreshed amounts. So the amounts that are reflected in your handout are the proposed escrow fee schedule for 2022. Dan can speak to the different numbers, but if the board is amenable, I believe we could put a resolution on to revise this schedule in your master fee schedule, because as you know, you moved all of the fees to a master fee schedule, and then you can do that by simple resolution. Dan, did you have anything to add in terms of the dollars?
Mayor and board, it makes it a little easier for the applicant too. It breaks it down a little easier. So if you're going for like an area variance for a fence, we're not asking for $2,500. We're asked for $500 now, and for site plan a little more. And some of the fees did go up because there's a lot more review now with the stormwater review and everything with the 100-year storm. So the reviews have been more costly.
Would you go through what's different and what's changing, and most importantly, I guess, what's increasing? And so my goal with this would be to simplify this for the building department in the ways that we can, but I just also want to be cautious that we're not overburdening, small projects with, again, additional fees and additional hurdles for people to overcome them. I think we can see, we just saw what that can mean to some people. And so let's just want to understand how this is changing from what we have.
Oh, well, right now, the code just has a standard $2,500 for all escrow deposits.
Yeah, but you don't
Across
do it.
the board.
No, but you don't make an escrow deposit for certain projects.
Yes, you do.
If I'm going to, let me give you an example. If I'm going to, I have to make a $2,500 escrow deposit if I'm going to make an application to change the door on my house at the AHRB. No, I don't deposit $2,500 to escrow for that.
If it involves a consultant's review,
Why would it
your
involve a
engineer and
consultant
your
review?
planner, if it does, then this would cover the cost of that, and the village would no longer be out of pocket for those services. So
But what I'm saying is that,
Dan can describe to you what the extent of a review would be necessary for something as you've described it.
well, that was just one example. I guess let's start with my overall question, which is, can you tell us which of these have increased, which of them are new additions, so that we can understand a little better what the difference between what's being proposed and what we have.
None of them are new. Your code allows you to take an escrow deposit for every application. So this was in consultation with the building
But
inspector.
what you
This
just
is-
said is not correct. Because right now, what I'm looking at, page 196, shows a $500 AHRB escrow. That's a new escrow requirement. So it's not happening now, it's a change. So I'm asking Dan to itemize which have changed from the current practice to the proposed practice.
Correct. That's a new one. If we think we need to take escrow, if we need review from an outside consultant, we'll take it for the AHRB now. That's up in the air, depending on what happens with the AHRB and planning board. Some of the other things, like a site plan before was 1,500. And we've been going over on the review with our consulting engineers.
I mean, that was a base fee for all site planning?
Yes.
Okay, so
No.
now you're scaling them you're scaling the escrow according to size. That makes perfect sense.
Correct. Like a minor amendment, we'd only need like 750 now, or for a small extension. But once you get into drainage or the whole site plan, would be the 2,500.
Dan, I have a question. I know in some,
25. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud.
I have a question, because I know in the past there have been some disagreements about escrow and how much money people get back. You know, there've been a couple of cases recently about that. So is there some way that we can facilitate the accounting process so that people are aware as we go along what's being spent and what isn't, so that they know what they're getting back? Because if you put $2,500 down, it doesn't mean you're out $2,500.
No.
Right.
They could request at any time the billing bill from the consulting engineers, what the fee is being used for.
Do we set the consultant's fee, or does the consultant, I mean, do we give the people an idea of what the fees are?
Yes, that's,
Consultants, so they have an idea of where they are in the process or not?
no, we ask for the fee, and then at the end, they'll request their if there's anything left over back.
Deputy
But
Mayor, this is
They don't know what. the-
Melissa. I think that's what's happening is these fees have been adjusted based upon what the past experience has been and the cost of utilizing the outside engineer and the outside planner to review these processes, which is why there's been an assessment amongst staff to make these recommendations, which some were insufficient. So this is trying to make it more on par with what the estimated cost of the review would be. And if that is not fully used, then that would be returned to the applicant based upon their request. If it's exceeded, then there would be a request for an additional fund for escrow.
We seem like we're going back to more and more applicants and ask them to refresh their escrow. So that's why some of them, we ask for a little increase.
And specifically in the code 169.1, deposit of funds by applicant and use of funds, it specifically permits an escrow deposit for a special permit, site plan, subdivision approval, zoning amendment, variance, or any other appeal to the ZBA, the Design and Historic Review Board, an excavation permit, or any other permit required by the code. The village may require the applicant to deposit an initial sum of money in order to cover the review. And it said such sum shall be based on the estimated cost to the village of reviewing the particular type of application before it. So these are the proposed amounts based upon the recommendations of the planner and the building inspector. And certainly next meeting, when you're looking at adopting a resolution to put the fees and make them different, then you can adjust this based upon the recommendations. But these are just a summary of the recommendations based upon the estimated cost to the village of reviewing the particular type of application. And
Right,
the fees,
I'm not
the
questioning
fees,
the escrow. I just want to be transparent so people
Right.
know exactly what we're talking about and
Right.
how we got there.
right, and the fees for your consultants, your consulting engineer, and also your consulting planner are in accordance with the agreements in place with the village. So there's an hourly dollar amount there. And both Anthony and Valerie have estimated based upon the particular actions that are now going to be included in the escrow funds.
I understand all that. I still haven't answered my question. Like, I know that part of the code. Thank you very much for reminding everyone else about it. I still want to know what is changing here? What's new? What are new fees? What are new hurdles for people with small projects? And those are the things, those are the things that I do not want to add. So if we're going to add a $500 fee on top of the mailing list and on top of the other issues for someone to do a very minor thing at their home, I want to take that out of this part. I'm okay with the site plan issues where you're looking at a large subdivision and you're asking for too little escrow at the beginning and you're having to go back and request money 3 or 4 times during the course of the review. Those kind of projects make perfect sense for you to increase the number. It's the small ones that I want to avoid. So I just want to get an answer to that question so we can understand if anything's changing, and if it is, by how much, and if that makes sense to all of us.
I don't think you had a sliding scale before, so I think these are just estimates. So,
But I think that it's not a
We don't
typical.
have, nobody before this,
correct.
someone with a small project would not have to submit money to escrow. And now we're telling them that they have to. And I'm asking which of these are new? Are we asking people to do that?
Mike,
Why is it
so-
such a hard question to answer?
some of the new ones are for like area variances, zoning variances. Before, we never did a resolution or anything. So now that's driving a little more review from our consultants. So those are some of the new ones.
So area and use variances are going to the planner and they're not just going to the ZBA?
No, the planner attends that meeting now.
So are you saying a use variance was never requested before and now we're asking for $2,000?
No, we had a use variance before. We're asking for a little more money if it's a bigger project and a little less for like smaller projects. So it's more broken down now. Like for a smaller, for like a fence variance, we'd only ask for 500. We wouldn't ask for the, say, 3,500, like for a whole house variance.
Give me an example. What's a fence variance?
I'm sorry, a use variance. Like if you're gonna go for a deer fence, because our code only allows like the 6 foot. If you want to go for an 8-foot fence in your side or your backyard, you need to get a variance for that.
I'm going to ask an obnoxious question. Why would we need a planner to analyze that? Like, why would we need a professional planner to think about that? And why would we want to pass that on to a?
She's attending the zoning board meetings who traditionally have failed to meet their obligation of written findings and filing the written findings with an executed signature of the chairman with the village clerk. Up to, in the past, there haven't been the appropriate filings under the law, which then what it does is it actually stops statutes of limitation from proceeding and nothing's ever final. So what the village planner has been doing is she's been attending these meetings and has been assigned to attend the meetings and to prepare these written findings in such a way that they're sort of above reproach. So as we get further into the planner's tenure with the zoning board, it's going to be easier because now we have templates in place, we have documents, and the chairman and the board are now becoming more familiar with their obligations. So that's what it is she's attending the meetings on a regular basis on your behalf.
Just to go back to what I think Trustee Patino was kind of saying. So if someone previously wanted to do a fence for the deer saw, the 8-foot fence, did they have to pay a fee?
No, we would not ask for an escrow fee, no.
Okay, and now we will be.
Yes.
Okay,
I
so
think what this is indicating is that what's happening is that the boards are doing less, the professionals are doing more, and we're offsetting more costs onto homeowners for review process. And I think, I just, in theory, and I understand the specific issue about the zoning board you just pointed out, but in theory, I'm against that. Despite how knowledgeable and experienced our planner is, I think we should utilize her expertise where it's important. And I think for these little issues, they can be handled by HRB, zoning board, planning board without the addition of a professional. That's my take.
Trustee Patino, just to respond to that, I just want to advise that if the planner was a staff member, that person would be expected to go to these meetings. Unfortunately, in this situation here, we don't have a planner who is on staff, so she is a consultant. What we're trying to do, as Lori Lee stated, is trying to get the boards to review and to do these things properly, which is at a cost for the planner. If the village does not charge these escrow fees, what has happened is that the village is incurring the costs related to the planner's work there. So that's what the purpose of trying to set these escrow fees is, to avoid what we've discovered. I know this was ongoing before I got here. There were several bills that were provided by the village, and we did not get escrow from the applicants, in which case then the case was done and we couldn't get it. So at this point, this is to try to cover the village's costs related to reviewing the proper processes for the applicants.
But there's also the issue that I think Donna was alluding to, which is having a process in place for how escrow gets determined, who's assessing the reasonableness of the invoices and fees, and what that process is, and are the applicants being notified about how their escrow is being used, so we don't end up with complaints from applicants about how the escrow is spent. And I think if we're going to talk about adjusting the fees on a sliding scale, and I'm still not 100% sure what's exactly different, other than there's a sliding scale now for different size projects. We should be talking about that process at the same time and making sure that if it's not already in place, that we put it in place at the same time we do this. And I also know that we've had many discussions about the building department permit fees and whether there's too many of them or the fee set, and shouldn't this all be a holistic conversation about all of that at the same time, so we make one holistic change that all applicants and developers going forward would be aware of. And I agree with Michael's point on the smaller projects. I think when people have to do some small portion of their roofs or a retaining wall, we should be making people want to come to the village and apply for the permits and do it the right way, not give them more reasons to do it without the village's knowledge.
Yeah, I just think setting the bar higher for small work is the wrong approach to this process of permitting and approvals.
I agree.
That's my point. And so in order for me to assess if that's what's happening with this, I would just need to see the page that has the new fees, proposed fees, just alongside what the current is. So we can see what those are and just compare it 1 to 1. And until I can see that, there's no way I can really assess whether or not what's being proposed is sensible or otherwise.
We will get you that, Mike.
Yeah, and I believe this topic is going to be on your next board meeting because Dan and Valerie and the engineer and myself, we've been working on a holistic approach to the applications, which are going to be online and available. So this was just one little element. And you see it's just on for discussion tonight. So certainly we can get you the rest of this information when the topic is on for discussion and potential action.
In pursuit of that, I think, and this is just a slight reframing of Michael's point, can you make a recommendation for a baseline threshold for a project cost below which there would be no fee? Because $500 for a variance for a fence can be a significant percentage of the cost of a fence. So the difficulty here is not just what it was before, which in this case was 0, versus what it is now, which in this case is 500 or 750. The page here says 750. And is there a dollar amount? Is there just a threshold amount below which we say, this is just too much money to ask for something this little?
Right, so that's something that we could put in for the discussion next time, because that is a point. If a project costs whatever, $2,000, should we be charging $750 to do that? So maybe we can talk about, maybe you could bring that up as part of the discussion, Dan, next time?
Yes,
Or
and it's not a charge, it's escrow. Sometimes we do collect it for those projects, and it's not used, or a very small amount of it, it would be used, and then they would get that money refunded to them.
Okay, so what I would suggest is that the rest of the trustees think about what they would like to have information-wise prior to next meeting, and then we can ask Dan and Melissa and Molly to put that together so we have that time for the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move over then to discussion number 3, which is a discussion about those docks. So I know we have a memo from Jennifer and Stephen about the docks. Melissa, do you want to talk about it, or somebody else?
Stephen is on, so, oh, I see him. So I would just ask Stephen to discuss this.
Yeah, there's 2 options. We can go with the old way where we hire a company, come put them in, and then take them out in the wintertime. The other option would be to have a company put them in, take them away, and store them for the winter. They would tow them to Piermont, I believe, and they would bring them back in the springtime. So it would be totally out of our hands to put them back in next spring.
What did we traditionally do? We just had them put them in and put them out and leave them there?
No, we pull them out, then we put them to the in the sand, and marine. Another company would come in and tow them to the boat around the pier and fast them in. We would have to get them to the shore.
Stephen, can you just clarify when you say that the village takes out the docks, we have to actually get a company to come in and do that, right? We can't do that with our staff. We need a
No,
boat.
we can't. We don't have the means to get them to the shore.
So we
So
need
they have to be towed to the
assistance
shore.
from an outside company to come in with a boat to go remove the docks, get
And
them
bring
to
them
the shore.
Correct.
Right.
And then we
So-
lift them from the shore to where they are now.
So at the very least, if the docks get placed back into the river, then we would need a company to do that as well.
Correct.
That's a quick question. Who uses the docks?
Just boaters that go up and down the Hudson River.
And are they frequently used or are they infrequently used? I rarely see anybody there.
Usually it's on Sundays, people going to punch at Half Moon.
And I have received emails from the boat club asking about the status of the docks. I did advise that it was on for discussion this evening.
Who's the boat club?
For the yacht club.
Who's that?
I can tell you who it was.
I think they're from Yonkers.
I think it's
Yeah.
Yonkers Yacht Club.
Oh,
So
Isn't
is this essentially boat parking for Half Moon?
Well, it's for
Oh,
people.
Half
who-
Moon.
Just for half moon.
Yeah. And we have gotten, in the past, we have gotten a request from someone who wanted to rent it out so they could do charters, and we can charge for that as well. So, I mean, it's up to everyone else if we want to go forward with it. How many slips are there? 4 or 6?
Six. I
Six.
believe 6.
Do people from Dobbs Ferry use them?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Also, how much does it, in addition to paying for the fee to take these docks in and out to an outside company, how many hours of DPW time does it take to take them in and take them out? And what does that cost the village?
Well, there's probably 5 guys and it takes between 5 and 6 hours.
And so can you give me a rough estimate of what that costs the village?
It's about $2,000 to install and $2,000 to remove.
And it should also be pointed out that if there's a major hurricane coming, those docks have to come out.
Have to come out. Yep, correct.
just to clarify, the person who contacted me is Jerry Silverman. He's the president of the Hudson River Boat and Yacht Club and a Dobbs Ferry resident.
Now, if we can make money on these docks, that would be one thing. You know, but we don't have anything in place yet. I know in the past we tried to do stuff and for various reasons there were issues. But I have a hard time spending $11,000, well, actually almost $15,000 for a handful of people to use, and we're not making anything on them. If we had a something in if we want to do like next year and have something in place where people want to rent it, or there's somebody we can rent it. I know Marine, Dwayne, you know, had those boats there that one time, but we have nothing in place right now. So, you know, personally, I do have issues with spending that kind of money.
You know, the money is really the issue. I think we don't make money on our parks. And the question is, you know, is this something that makes the village, the park, you know, more accessible? Is it an amenity for residents, for other people in the Hudson Valley who are boaters? And I think my answer to that question is yes, it is. It becomes a question of how high a priority is it relative to where else we could spend if it's $15,000 for the year. So we did have that deal one year where somebody else was paying for it because they were using the dock commercially. That had some bumps, but had the advantage of us not having to pay for it.
Yeah.
But certainly aside from the money, it's a nice amenity for the village to have as part of integrating itself into the Hudson Valley. The Hudson River is the original main mode of transportation for this region. So
nobody uses it.
I don't think you can separate, Larry, the money from the value of the amenity. If it were free, it should absolutely be there.
Well, I'm not trying to separate them, Matt. I'm just trying to make a point that the decision is about the money, not about, you know, whether it would be a good thing to have docks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could take a straw poll and see if we want to go forward with it. Shari, do you want to add anything at this time?
So these docks that we're talking about, that's not for kayakers, that's for actual boats.
It's for actual boats, not
Right,
kayaks.
so when did we have a dock there that boats docked at? When was the last time?
Right before COVID.
Pre-pandemic or?
Yeah, it was about 3 years ago.
Okay. And so did it, I mean, because I know when I'm down by the river in the summer at all the jazz concerts every Wednesday night, there's always lots of boats that are going up and back. And if it's something where then some of those people on the boats could come and enjoy the music and see that, I mean, like, I mean, it's not a ton of money we're talking about, but it is something that adds some character and some validity to the fact that we're actually on the river, which is such a bonus. It's one of the reasons I moved here and not to the middle part of Westchester. You know, it's such an asset that we have. And if it's something that we let people know that we have, then maybe people with boats would come, because there are tons of boats out there when the weather's nice.
Nicole, how do you feel about it?
I'm always in favor of the docks. I think they're a very nice amenity. I agree with everything that Larry said. I also think that there's been multiple conversations about this every year, and they always come at the same time, like March or April. That's way too late to be having these conversations. And we have to make sure, and so Melissa's our new administrator, and she's going to do that this year, that we have this conversation much earlier. Like if we started talking to companies now, there was a few years ago, I think Donna had talked to them, a river cruise that wanted to come, and we did have that deal with the other company that there were bumps, but maybe we could work those bumps out. And I think those are really great things when you can have river cruises coming out of Dobbs Ferry or stopping in Dobbs Ferry and picking up people. And, you know, the biggest issue we had run into with those events was the parking, but I feel like now that we have the Park Mobile down there, it's like a non-issue because people don't have to go to the police station to get parking. You know, they can just pay the Park Mobile. And so that solves that problem. And I think that it's nice when you're down there and there's boats there. And the few times that it was used by that big river cruise, it was really nice to see it down there and it was lively and energetic. So I don't think it's a significant amount of money. I assume, Stephen, that the quote you got includes the removal during those storms and hurricanes like it has in the past. So I think that I think it makes sense for the village and we should bring it back.
Mike, how do you feel?
I agree with what Trustee Sullivan just said. I think that it's kind of interesting that there's, I don't know what the hiccups were the last time with you know, sort of fees and leasing, but if those things can be worked out, that'd be great. But even if they can't, I think it is a useful amenity. There are Dobbs Ferry residents with boats. You cannot keep a boat in Dobbs Ferry because there's no club, there's no place to keep something. So people residents of Dobbs Ferry keep their boats in other places. They keep them in Tarrytown, keep them in Yonkers, they keep them further up. And I think having an ability to come into and you know, sort of dock and bring your boat to the park is, I think, a useful and valuable thing. So, and it's not a huge amount of money.
Matt, what do you think?
I also just want to add that it was high this year because of the fuel. That's why it was much higher than in years past, but it's possible it could go down next year, or, you know, possible. It was much higher.
Matt?
I think that, you know, there's a lot of times you say it's not a lot of money, and when you add up all those things, it's a lot of money. And some of those things in the current environment, we have to be respectful of taxpayer money and, you know, cut back on those nice to haves that we just pay for because they don't sound individually like a lot of money. I can only speak anecdotally, and that is I rarely see anybody there now that the police don't have their boat. I just, you know, I wish we had some empirical data that suggested that people were actually making use of it, that when they make use of it, they're coming into Dobbs Ferry and supporting businesses and spending money here. As a subsidized parking lot for boats for Half Moon, I don't think it is a worthy taxpayer expenditure. So, you know, I wish I had more data, but on gut, I wouldn't support spending the money.
Larry?
I would support it this year with the caveat that we, A, you know, audit its use, try and look at it, and B, explore commercial alternatives to either lower or eliminate the cost for next year. But that we take a hard look at it at the end of this year. And people keep mentioning Half Moon. I don't know that it's a boat parking lot for Half Moon, but if Half Moon is using it or they're getting customers out of it, maybe they would want to help pay for it. I don't know if anyone's ever asked that question.
I think we have. Yeah.
What's that?
We have, and they said no.
It's not just Half Moon. I mean, Hudson Social is down there too. I mean, they would benefit from the boats there as well.
Absolutely. So, you know, and again, I think there are ways that we could either offset or minimize the cost to the village. And Nicole's exactly right. We need to think about this before it starts to get warm outside, or arguably before it gets cold outside. to try and line up something next year, maybe with a commercial operation that would help pay for it.
I actually think we should start working on it now, like not like immediately tomorrow, but like in the near future. And so it doesn't get held off, because this is when people will start planning for next year again, this summer.
Okay, so I'm also in favor for this year and see if we could keep some kind of data or check on what the use is. So having passed that hurdle, now we're up to options 2 or 3 is, right? Is that correct? One would be to install and remove the boat docks only, and the other one would be to install, remove, and put storage. So my feeling is just to remove them. I would be fine with that, but I don't know that does anybody want to go for the storage as well?
I'm fine with just, sorry.
I was just gonna say, the time when the docks are stored down there, they're stored, at least if I remember right, next to the concrete abutments, and they're not, so they're not in the, in the way in the middle of the park, and they're also out of the water when the park is used the least. So I'm fine with eliminating the storage cost and keeping them on site.
Anybody else?
I would prefer to use Custom Marine, who I believe who we've used in the past.
Yeah.
And we've always had good results with the taking them out and putting them in. But I wouldn't be adverse to finding a different storage solution if there was a way where it became revenue generating and paid for itself, because not having them down there at all is more sightly than having them there, even though they are put off to the side.
Mike, do you have any preference?
Yes, option 2, custom marine.
Very good and succinct, like it. Okay, so we can then move on with, that was just a discussion item. So I guess, Melissa, you can move on with that to, I guess, a resolution for next time?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's move to discussion number 4, which is a discussion on the fire department using the village parking lot for a fire department recruitment event. I know we have a memo from the assistant fire chief dated April 1st, 2022, which explains that they would like to use it on Saturday, April 23rd from 11 to 3 p.m. I don't see a problem with this. Does anybody else see a problem with this?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Because I think that's Earth Day. That's like Earth Day weekend. So are there other things that are going on in the village with that?
There are, but everything the timing works out for all of the events. There's a beautification cleanup day. There's a Little League parade. Yes, everything. It's the same day. Hopefully it's
right.
great
I know, that's a
weather
big
and
day,
everything
right,
works out
right.
well. The chiefs are here if anybody has any question.
How can we help to get people down there to sign up?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we have any problem with it. So is there a motion to authorize the Dobbs Ferry Fire Department to host a recruitment event on April 23rd, 2022 from 11 to 3? Trustee Rosenberg, second. Trustee Cassell, all in favor. That passes unanimously. So thank you guys and good luck. Hope you get some people.
Thank you.
Discussion number 5 is the discussion declaring the fire department vehicle as surplus equipment and authorizing the purchase of a new fire department vehicle. I know we also have a memo from the assistant fire chief dated March 30th about that. Maybe if they're there, maybe they could speak about it.
Yes, chief. Thank you.
Sure. How's everybody doing? Joseph Giuliano, Assistant Fire Chief. So we discussed this during the budget process with Melissa and Jeff. We wanted to replace our 2016 Chevy Tahoe. It has about 55,000 miles on it. The reason for replacement is it has about $8,000 that needs in work and it's out of warranty. So for us to put that kind of money into it, it's not cost effective. We can get a approximate resale value of approximately $30,000 for it. So we can offset the cost for a new vehicle about half by going this route.
Okay, and Melissa or Jeff, is this budgeted, and if so, which one?
That will be in the current budget, the 2021, 2022 budget.
And it's budgeted, we have it, it's fine?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I had one question that the Sustainability Task Force had asked, and Jeff may have reached out to you, Joseph, but they had asked whether it was possible for either to look at either electric or hybrid vehicles. I don't know that electric vehicles of that size are available, but whether or not, the vehicle would come in hybrid and whether that's something to consider.
So we have in the past, sorry, it's a little short for me. We have in the past looked at hybrid vehicles. Unfortunately for us, it's not feasible just because the amount of equipment we carry in these trucks, as far as radios, we have 3 different radios. We have to transmit to our primary communication center, which is in Valhalla. And that takes a lot of wattage to transmit from here to there. We have DOT and NFPA required lighting packages because we operate on the parkway and we go to the thruway with Ardsley at times. We also charge a lot of batteries in the trucks. So just so you could also pass along to the Sustainability Task Force, we recently switched all of our gas powered saws to electric saws. So we are, trying to do our part that way and help, we appreciate the work that they're doing and we're doing everything we can on our end. But some things like this car, like the fire trucks, we're just not there yet with the technology to be able to efficiently say that at 3:00 in the morning, we go to start these trucks or we go to start the cars that they're going to start. And when we get on a scene, if we're there for an extended period of time, they might not be able to sustain what we need them to sustain for the duration of the call.
And that would be true of both hybrids and or electric. Electric is that's more complicated. But
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Because
Well,
we have
thank
looked
you.
at them in the past. It's just not at that point yet where we feel comfortable enough, or other fire departments, because we did check with neighboring departments. Nobody has any hybrid or fully electric fire chief vehicles.
Well, thank you for checking, and we hope that you will keep it in mind as you're requisitioning equipment going forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the fire department? Okay, so is there a motion to designate the 2016 Chevrolet Tahoe of the Dobbs Ferry Fire Department as surplus equipment to be sold to help offset the purchase price of replacing the surplus equipment? And is there be further resolved that the Dobbs Ferry Fire Department is authorized to purchase a 2022 Chevrolet Tahoe from D. Nora Chevrolet off the New York State contract for the amount of $64,273.50. Trustee Sullivan, second trustee Patino, all in favor. I can't see trustee Rosenberg anymore, so I don't know if he voted yes on that.
He's in favor. That's all.
I voted yes.
Okay, so that passes unanimously.
All right, thank you, Melissa, Jeff, Mayor, Board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion item number 6 is the discussion of declaring old cameras as surplus equipment and the purchase of new police cameras. And in support of that, we have a memo dated April 6, 2022 from the chief requesting authorization to purchase new crime scan digital cameras. I don't know, is he present?
He is. He's at the podium.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, I was seeking your permission to transfer funds from my investigative line over to my equipment line in the current budget. I am seeking to upgrade the department's or Detective Division's crime scene camera, which was the old one is over 10 years old and no longer serviceable, to a upgraded Nikon digital SLR. Fortunately, we only require the camera body as the lenses are compatible with this new item. I talked to Jeff. It's just a matter of making the transfer of funds from one account to the other.
Okay. So any other questions for the chief? Okay, so is there a motion to?
Wait, but these aren't the body cams. These are different cameras.
No, this is just a straight crime scene detective camera.
Okay.
Is there a motion to authorize the village treasurer to execute a transfer of $2,796.95 from investigative expense account A3120.471 to police equipment account A31.20.200 And is there further a motion to authorize the village administrator to execute a purchase agreement with B&H Photo for the purchase of a new Nikon D850 digital SLR camera body? Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, Trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Discussion item number 7 is a discussion on the rumble strips on along exit 17. We have a memo from the village administrator dated April 7th, 2022, which discusses the placement of rumble strips on the Somo River Parkway exit ramp. Is there any discussion or questions regarding this?
Yeah, anything we can do to help that area should be done. It's a very dangerous exit.
We had
And
a,
from what I understand, there haven't been any complaints about the noise from the rumble strips, so that's the case.
correct.
I don't see any reason why we shouldn't do it.
this
There
is
have been
50
no
years
complaints.
out of date. We should have done this 50 years ago.
Donna, didn't you, when you and I attended a meeting with representatives of the county, Mary Jane Shimsky, and with Andrea Stewart Cousins about this, and we talked about the rumble strips, correct?
Yeah, they did, and they put in some temporary ones, I think, to see if, again, because rumble strips can be problematic if people complain about the noise, et cetera. I mean, more needs to be done there than that, but you know, I think they put in striping and they put in some extra signs and stuff, and this is just a an audible and physical reminder that you got to slow down on that curve.
I
So,
would
yeah,
just-
they were all together and they were all behind it. So
I do want to clarify that the resolution is to request that the New York State Department of Transportation consider our request. So this is not actually installing the rumble strips,
Right.
but for the New York State DOT to consider it, they need a formal resolution from the Village of Dobbs Ferry and the Village of Ardsley. Ardsley is anticipating considering a resolution once we do.
Okay, so be it resolved, is there a motion to request that the New York State Department of Transportation consider the installation of permanent rumble strips at southbound exit 17 off the Somo River Parkway at Ashford Avenue, and that the village will coordinate with the Village of Ardsley to submit this request to the New York State Department of Transportation? Is there a motion? Trustee Taylor, second trustee Casal, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Discussion item number 8 is a discussion on authorizing the village administrator to review and approve banner requests. In discussing the banner request, we do have a memo from Laura Lee dated April 5th, 2022. Laura Lee, do you want to talk about that a little bit further?
Sure. There are many provisions in the sign code which says the village approves things. So whenever a banner is to be placed on public property or a banner is to be placed temporarily, those applications have been coming directly to the Village Board of Trustees, which delays the review internally from staff. And this would be a way to streamline that process and then to increase the speed with which this can be done. You have a provision in the code under the village administrator's duties, which you're allowed to delegate particular topics and items and reviews. And this would be a sample of the kind of thing that you could easily delegate to an administrative review. It is a purely ministerial matter. And this would also provide the opportunity for the village to better keep a schedule and a calendar of when things go up, when things come down, and so we don't have repetitive overlapping. So Melissa would be able to immediately let the DPW know, alert the police department if necessary for, in terms of closing a street down to hoist a banner over a right of way. So it's just a way to be more user-friendly and public-friendly.
Any other comments by the board?
My only concern would be that there are some banner requests that have, sort of traditions, and Melissa being new, you may not be as familiar with all of these things. So, I mean, I would encourage maybe at least reporting to the board what your decision is, prior to, I don't know if there's a way to have it so that you reach out to the board or whether that's too cumbersome. But, I think our volunteer organizations do a lot, and it's very important that they have access and know that the village is supporting them.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have my hand up. You can't see me.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to say to Trustee Taylor's point, I think it might be easier or more efficient for if you know that you work with an organization or you've had an occasion in the past where there's been an organization who's requested a banner. There's certain things that happen every year at the same time that we could give those to Melissa, and she could have that history from us. And, this way she can know what's coming up too.
And I will say that the applications do go through the clerk's office, and the clerk's office does have a lot of the background information for me to let me know. I know there's one particular application that we have, and she gave me the background on that. So yes, I have the resources in Village Hall as well, but yes, I can work out a way to advise the board of the banners.
I think this is an excellent idea. I don't personally feel the need to be notified of that. I think there are a lot of items that are probably on our agenda that don't need to be, and this is certainly one of them. This is probably the least controversial one. And so I think I would encourage the administrator to not burden me with the knowledge of which she's approving or not approving this particular week.
Again, these are ministerial. It's really just an internal review to be sure. You're not putting a banner over top of an existing banner that's already been given permission.
Well, or that a banner, and again, Melissa's in the best position to judge this along with council, but that there's nothing's going up that, for example, is political or would otherwise be inappropriate on village property.
Yes, understood.
I do think Liz has enough experience with this too.
Absolutely.
And excuse, Mr. Mayor and board, I just do want to add that for several years now, my office has been working closely with DPW to make sure there is no overlap of banners or the distribution of the banners is fair for all who apply. So we do have that coordinated.
Okay, so let's move forward on this then. So is there a motion to delegate and assign to the village administrator the duty to receive, review, and process any ministerial permit requests for the placement of banners as temporary signs on public property as set forth in section 300-50 signs, and further resolve that the village administrator, in collaboration with other village departments, may develop written instructions, criteria, procedures, and an application for use by applicants to expeditiously process such banner permit requests. Is there a motion? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Casal, second. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Discussion item number 9 is a Play Streets Block Party application. We do have the application before us. Melissa, can you talk about it, or somebody else?
Yes, this is an application. I believe that during COVID, and no, I was not here, but I did get the information from the village clerk that during COVID, the board would allow for these so-called quote unquote play streets to allow the children to go out into the streets and play on bouncy houses, things of that nature. So this is the first application that's been filed with the village. It is a street closure, so that's why it would have to come to the board. Right now, this is not on for this evening, but we will be bringing it to the board in the future. There are no fees associated with any kind of block parties, play streets, anything that requires a street closure. The purpose of fees is to reimburse the village for any costs associated with processing the applications. This is, I think, one of the only applications we have in the clerk's office that does not have a fee. So we will be bringing that forward. This does not have a fee at this time, but it is just to ask the board if you agree with the street closure for this particular event, which is to occur on May 24th, 2022, with a rain date of April 24th, 2022, with a rain date of May 1st, 2022, from 2 p.m. until 6:30 p.m. They approximate about 50 children.
I have a question. I don't have an issue with the play street or anything like that. As far as charging, we'll discuss that when the time comes. It's a neighborhood thing. But my question is, you had mentioned bouncy castles, and that automatically brings me to insurance liability issues with something like a bouncy castle. Are we covered for that?
We should be getting liability coverage and a hold harmless statement from every applicant.
Okay.
I
There's
just wanted to add that I think this actually started on my street on Bellwood Avenue. So we've had a couple of these already. They're phenomenal. And it brings all the families out, and how they dealt with the street closures is there were people standing at like Transvaal and Bellwood and then Bellwood and Ashwood. And if a car really needed to get by, they would let the car go by. And all the volunteer parents, when I grew up in Brooklyn, we just yelled car and everyone went to the curb. But the parents would make sure that there was nobody there and, things like that. But it wasn't really very disruptive, and it was just wonderful community events. And it's all volunteers. So they take care of everything. There was no bouncy castles in the ones that we did by me. There was arts and crafts and, lots of kids on bikes and scooters and hula hoops and, things like that. But maybe they're going to plan a bouncy castle at this one, but it was much more low key, old school, just getting everybody out.
Okay. So is there a motion to grant the authority to close Price Street between Overlook and Chestnut between the hours of 2 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. on Sunday, April 24th, 2022, with a rain date of May 1st, 2022? Trustee Rosen Asher, second. Trustee Sal, all in favor? It passes unanimously. Discussion item number 10 is the Veterans Exemption Modification. So I know we had some emails about this going back and forth. Jeff, do you want to speak about it, or is this?
I think I can speak to it. Jeff, would that help?
That would help.
Well, we were contacted by the Greenberg assessor, who of course represents you as your assessing unit. And they were interested in making some changes to the exemption levels for this particular available tax exemption for veterans. And when we reviewed the code, we thought it appropriate at this point to formalize that the village would adhere to whatever changes the town was making on your behalf. And so this would necessitate a local law to just to add an article that makes it clear that those exemptions that exist in law will be handled by the assessing unit of Greenberg. So this is to set a public hearing for a local law, which I have drafted and is available, and we'll get it circulated in advance of the local law. And the Greenberg assessor unfortunately indicated a very short time frame and that it needs to be done before May 1st. So we are proposing to conduct the public hearing on the 26th. And if there are no objections or impediments, the Greenberg assessor would very much appreciate if you could take action following the close of the public hearing and adopt your local law, which would allow them to proceed with this change.
And if I understand it correctly, it really is to raise the limits on where the exemptions apply. And I think, at least looking at the numbers when that went around, they still seem quite low. And so it's really sort of bringing them into line with the property value and, sort of current economic conditions. So I think it makes perfect sense.
Yes, and this
thanking veterans isn't how you do things. You actually help them.
Going forward, all such types of exemptions will be in the hands of Greenberg to your benefit. You won't have to process them each one as they come in. This way, we can put another streamlining effort, put a streamlined process right in your code, and then you can adhere to whatever changes they'll be making in the future.
So that will be the local law that we will adhere to change. Like if they update it again in 5 years, it will just automatically. Update.
Yes, it will automatically happen
Lori Lee,
On-
do I
on all
understand you correct-
available exemptions. Yes.
But that would not require, if there were, we would still have to approve any new exemption, correct?
Yes, new exemptions usually are a function of federal and state law. So yes, we could add them as they would be approved by the legislatures, applicable legislatures. But in going forward, if the exemption levels, which are, as Trustee Patino has pointed out, they're very low. The benefits are
Right.
offered.
My
So
question
the
was-
increases across the board would be handled by Greenberg.
Right, I understood that. What my question is about is I was not on the board at the time, but the board had to approve the veterans exemption. So in a case where the board has an exemption like that in the current state, the board would need to approve, we are not giving up that power. We're only saying like index existing ones, in whatever manner the assessor sees fit. We're not giving somebody else license to create exemptions that we would have to otherwise approve.
Correct.
Thank you.
These are the existing ones that Greenberg handles on your behalf.
Except for condos.
Yeah. We had to get that in, right?
Okay, so what we're going to do is set it for a public hearing so we could clarify all these issues. So is there a motion to schedule a public hearing on Tuesday, April 26, 2022 at 6:30 to amend Chapter 273 of the village local law regarding taxation? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Rosen Asher, all in favor? That's done. Discussion item number 11 is to consider a resolution awarding the bid for the Main Street Streetscape Improvements Project. Do you want to talk about this, Melissa?
Yes, so at the last meeting, the board did discuss the project of the Main Street Streetscape project, and we could not ask the board to take action that evening because we had not yet received New York State Department of Transportation approval of the project, which we received today at about 5 p.m. So at this point, we can present this project to the board. The only item that is not included in this resolution is the burying of the Altice wires, because that would delay the approval from the DOT. So if the board still wants to consider that aspect of the project, we can present it at a future date, and it would be considered a change order for this project, and that cost was $150,000. But at this point, this incorporates all of the alternates that the board discussed at the last board meeting, alternates 2, 3, and 4, for a total cost of $908,670, with a total cost of the village responsibility of, outside of the grant funding, the remaining $458,670 plus $100,000, which we already have designated in the capital fund. So all of the designations are in the resolution.
Okay, so, I know we discussed this an awful lot, and I think we're ready to move forward with it. Does anybody have any comments or questions or concerns before we put this to a vote?
Does that mean that we're not doing what the Altice burying or whatever they were doing?
At this point, it's not included in the project. That was an additional item that we would have to start over from scratch, which was not explained to me or to the board at the last meeting
No, it was
when we
not.
discussed that. So what I discussed with our grant coordinator, who is concerned about the time and having this project completed by the end of this year, rather than have to wait another 4 weeks for New York State Department of Transportation approval. We felt it necessary to move forward with the project, and then that aspect of the project can be considered as a change order. And then we can find out exactly what kind of delay, if any, there would be from the DOT in moving forward with that aspect of the project.
Well,
We are
actually,
going,
forward
we
with-
are going to have, the engineer is going to do a mock-up so that the board can actually see what it will look like with the removal of just the Altice wires on Main Street. So that's anticipated when, once this project is approved and we can go forward with it.
One question, how is this project being coordinated, and are we going to be able to give the downtown businesses and residents, some kind of a roadmap or plan for what's going to happen when?
Once the board considers this resolution this evening, we have a meeting tomorrow with the engineer to discuss that exact question, to find out how much time we will have, to see if it's going to affect the parklets, which are on for discussion later on. And so we'll know how much notice we can give all of the businesses on Main Street and how and when they're going to be affected.
Excellent.
But at this
Thank
point,
you.
I don't have that answer for you.
Okay, but thank you. It sounds like it's coming.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we'll move forward with it. So is there a motion to authorize the village administrator to enter into an agreement with Palladino Concrete Creations Corporation for an amount not more than $908,670 for the base bid and alternates 2, 3, and 4 for the Main Street Scrape project, and authorize the village administrator to take any necessary steps to effectuate the intent of this resolution? Is there a motion? Trustee Rosenberg, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Okay, discussion item number 12 is to consider a resolution approving the audit of claims as submitted by and recommended by the village treasurer. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, standard audit of claims unless there's questions.
Are there any questions for the treasurer? No. Okay, so is there a motion to approve payment of claims audit number 1 for April 2022? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor? It passes unanimously. Okay, discussion item number 13 is a discussion of the parklet fees. So, there's a little bit of background. Laura Lee, can you give us what the background is?
Sure. The parklet program, you decided you'd like to extend that for this season at the suggestion of the building department and as recommended by the village administrator. That season would run concurrent with your sidewalk cafe permits program. It just seemed logical. So the documents have been drafted with a season April 1st through the end of the cafe permit program. This is a licensing effort, and your stated intent for the public purpose involved is to gain, an opportunity for increased health and safety, and also to support businesses who were adversely affected so dramatically by the economically by the COVID restrictions on in-house dining. So any business qualifies to open a parklet, any commercial business on Main Street and Cedar, and that's the program that you have approved. And now we're returning to the question of fees. You had recommendations from your former village administrator. There was discussion in December 14th as to the fees for the parklets. And we're back here and we'd like to be able to get the applications and the license agreements out. There's a certain amount of ministerial effort by the businesses who have adult beverage licensing. So they'll need to get information up to the SLA, the State Liquor Authority. So that's where you are.
So just as a refresher, what were the I don't know if you know the answer. During the winter, we charged a fee of how much?
You voted in December for a fee of $250 a space.
So the history of fees is in 2020, it was $250 per month. In 2021, it was $50 per month. And this past winter, it was $250 per month.
Thank you.
Listen, can you explain to the public how these fees, how the fee of $250 was arrived at?
Sure, there are a couple of components involved. It's to cover the out-of-cost expenses, which the village undertook to benefit these local businesses in the purchase of the barriers, and also the staff time it takes to put them out, take them away, and also a component in terms of lost revenue on the parking meters that will become inaccessible to the public at large, and also a fair market value for the fact that those spaces are unavailable for general public and use. The residents, their Main Street residents, Cedar Street residents are limited. They cannot use those parking spaces for the duration of the licenses. So there are a couple of different components in place, but I know during some of the extensions, the village waived fees to encourage their use. So we're back to square to talk about what a fair market value is.
Any thoughts, comments by anyone?
Shari has her hand up.
Okay, sorry, Shari.
Yeah, I just I'm very confused about all this talk about the cost of the barriers, because I'm assuming the village owns the barriers and can use them for other things. And I thought the fees, the $250 that were incurred the first time when there was fees, was to help pay for the barriers. So are the businesses supposed to pay for the barriers in perpetuity? That's my one question. The other thing is that there has been the math that has been presented is not definitive math. It's not 2 and 2 equals 4. It was a lot of supposition. So I don't think there is like a real number. There's just a number that we're all going to come to that will then be something that is reasonable for these businesses. And as was stated earlier, when Patty Steinschneider spoke, that the restaurants are the real pulse of our village economically. That's why people come to Dobbs Ferry. And I know we're not in the business to help businesses make money, but the fact is if our downtown is suffering, then the entire village suffers. And the parklets have provided not only help for the restaurants in an industry that has suffered tremendously during the pandemic and is still suffering with supply chain issues and employee shortages and things like that. And think about the restaurants that change their hours and change their menus and things. But it's also something that helps to bring a sense of community to the community more than a parking spot does. One person gets a parking spot, but 12 people could be sitting together, having a meal and stuff. So I would just urge us, I know we're in favor of the parklets, but it's when we talk about if something's available, but is it also accessible? So we could have the parklets and say we have them, and then if we charge too much money for them, that it becomes a burden and they're really not serving the purpose for the community or for the business or for the village.
Anybody else?
I want to, this is just to reply to you a little bit. I agree with all the things you're saying. I think what happened the last time we had the discussion was that we were looking to, and I mean, I would love to just allow this to be free, but and I think a lot of us would, but I think that one of the issues that the village council brought up was that we had to apply a fair market value rate to the parking space. And so we put that in the hands of the two people at the time who were most capable of doing that. Still, that was our treasurer and that was our interim administrator. And they came up with they had their own sort of calculus as to how this would work out. Those are the people that we trust to come up with those things. I mean, I would know where to start, and I don't pretend to. And so we just trusted that they came up with a sensible number. We negotiated that. I think we sort of actually brought it down from what Mr. Lyons at the time, suggested in an effort to, sort of help the businesses, because we were aware of the fact that we don't want businesses to continue to pay for barriers that we've already paid for. And so I think the calculation was more about cost for DPW, cost of, some maintenance, cost of, parking revenue, lost parking revenue. And so we tried to come up with a number that was fair and reasonable, but still within a plausible market value number. And that's the one we came to. And what we were hoping at the time, and what all of us were, was to just set that number and then allow the program to continue without having to debate the amount sort of endlessly every season, because obviously the businesses want it to be less. We understand why, right? They want to make more money. But I think we still have to be mindful of this fair market value number. And I think, I was of the opinion that $250 was reasonable given the evidence that the treasurer and the administrator at the time presented to us.
I agree with Michael. I think that we set a rate. We said at the time that we didn't want to keep revisiting the rate. If there was some, compelling new mathematical development that suggested we should, I wouldn't mind doing that. But as Sherry said, there's a certain amount of, a finger in the wind to this. And so I think we should stay where we are. Nobody's presented a reason not to, other than we would like to pay less, which is fair enough.
No, I think the chamber in their letter actually asked to see the parking revenue calculations, that what revenue actually came in 2019, 2020, 2021 to see over the last 2 years, right? So that we're not getting, the people don't need the parking passes for their commuter lots because they're not commuting, and there's lots of people who are working from home and some are walking into the village, so they're not parking, so there's lots of different things that could affect that. But I think that for a large restaurant, $250 may not be a big deal, but for a smaller restaurant, it could be. So I don't want to keep, negotiating this either, because I do agree that we need to just set a rate and then everybody knows that's what it is. But it didn't pass unanimously at the $250 either. So it wasn't like that was all agreed upon, and it was agreed upon as a Band-Aid to get us through.
I'm in favor of the parklets. I think they do add a great amenity to the village, and it does help out the restaurants. But we also have to understand it's not just the parking meter fee. This is village property that we are allowing people to if you were in the building, if the restaurant wanted to take over a space upstairs, they would have to pay for it. So I think it's fair for the village to collect more than just the parking fee. So I think the $250 is a fair rate. The restaurants are at full capacity again, at least they can be. If that changes, we can look at it. But this space is now in addition to the space that they had even before the pandemic. And I think there needs to be a fair and reasonable fee for that. So I'm totally in favor of the parklets. And I think the $250 fee, is fair to the residents of the village of Dobbs Ferry.
Larry?
I'm fine with $250.
Nicole?
I'm probably obviously, or not probably, I'm obviously in the minority. I still think the $150 that I had proposed last time is a more reasonable number, because I do think that at some point the barriers have paid for themselves. And I think I think restaurants are doing better than they were, but they're not like thriving. And I do think they're the heart and soul of our downtown. And I think that, to Donna's point, like we're charging private entities to use public space, but we're getting consideration for it, and the public gets a benefit from that. It's not that the private entity also gets a benefit, but it's more incidental than the public benefit, which I think is much greater, that we can have this vibrant downtown with outdoor dining. I think that we should also talk about the Main Street project and how that's going to impact parklets, like if Sam's or Bellacosa or any Harper's decide to have it, like, is that going to impact it? Are we charging them for the parklets? I mean, how does that work? I think we should have that conversation right now. And I think that we should also have a conversation about whether this should be something we want to do every season. I know that the state liquor authority has only temporarily extended permission to have alcohol in parklets, but it's up to a restaurant if that is rescinded at some point to decide they want to have parklets without serving alcohol. I really don't think it's for us to say. It's for us to decide if we want to make this a permanent part of our village or not. I do think that they bring a certain charm and character to our downtown. I also agree with something Donna has said previously, but I don't think she said it tonight, that the business owners of the parklets should really encourage, if not mandate, that all of their employees park at 99 Cedar to free up the other parking spaces that aren't there.
Okay. So I also agree with Nicole saying, as far as, and Shari saying, as far as the banisters, you know, the restaurant shouldn't have to bear the cost of the banisters going forward. So barricades, sorry. I would be amenable to something somewhat lower than 250, but I also agree that whatever we decide certainly should be some type of a clause where people don't have to pay for it during the Main Street construction, and there should be some kind of a going forward. They should know ahead of time how it's going to affect them. So
I don't think the barriers have been paid off yet.
Well,
But it also doesn't really matter because, you know, if you're renting an apartment, like when do you pay less money for your rent because the studs and the drywall have been paid off? I mean, it's what
No,
we're
I think
really
it's
doing
come
here
up
is we're
because
charging a
everyone keeps
license
saying
fee
it
that is
should
like
be.
a rent, you know?
I'd like to, I think what the mayor just said was very reasonable. You know, it seems like everyone's in favor of the parklets. So now we're just talking about the price. And I don't honestly believe that the difference between $250 and $200 to the village will be as impactful as the difference between $250 or $200 a month to the restaurants. And so we're not losing much by giving a little and having it be more transparent. My question is, what is the fee for a cafe permit? What do restaurants pay for that? Can someone answer?
I don't know. It would be in the master fee schedule. And I think Dan Romer's left the meeting.
So I'm just wondering, is that monthly or is that seasonal?
That's a seasonal permit
Right.
because that's a permanent program and that's already included in the SLA licensing. They permit that. This is because the space in the street is non-contiguous.
No, I understand that. I'm just wondering if we could switch from a per month to a seasonal fee for a parklet, if that's something that's possible, because also the other thing is this Main Street work is not just going to affect, I mean, it's obviously going to affect the restaurants where the work is being done, but it's going to affect everything because it's going to affect people thinking, oh, I'm not going to go to Dobbs Ferry and stuff. And so the last thing we want to do is throw up literally more barriers for people.
Right. The impacts from the Main Street project have now been incorporated into this year's seasonal documents. And the village has to retain the right to suspend a parklet to accommodate this public works project. So of course, during the periods of suspension, there are no fees there would be no fees because the parklet will need to be removed completely and the barriers removed by DPW and then put back in place when that phase of the construction.
So my point's slightly different than that. I mean, it's maybe a business that knows like that its sidewalk's going to be interrupted from June to August, decides I don't want to do a parklet this year and I don't want to spend any money. And before we tell people what, here's a park application, I think we should also be telling them what the plan is for the sidewalk so they can make that decision rather than be angry that they invest, because they don't just invest money in the monthly fee, they invest money in the structures and the plantings and stuff to make it nice. And I don't disagree with Shari. If there was a way to make this a seasonal fee versus a monthly fee, I'm open to that as well. I don't know if we wanted to do a monthly fee for this year and then discuss if we're going to go permanent with it, discuss having a different fee structure.
And again, this is a licensing project, so this would be it has to be a monthly licensing fee because the village has to retain the right to suspend the license. And also, perhaps a restaurant doesn't want to take it for the season straight through. It's very different than the cafe permits because in terms of the cafe permits, you're not eliminating the public's ability to traverse that space. So there is a designation in case law and also in statutory law that permits these cafe permits as a permit program for a season. But in this case, a parklet, you cannot establish a formal program for a permit to designate for the benefit of a commercial entity, a public space. So it's a little different. And yes, we'd like to make them permanent, but they really do need to be, because it's a risk assessment and a balancing, which the board is entitled to make each and every season. So in this case, you've decided you want to proceed with the season. And in light of that, we're informing the applicants. Melissa's been working with the folks that have been calling with interest. And then after tomorrow, she'll have that construction phasing schedule. And some of the restaurants may choose not to participate as a result of the public works and the unknown entity of having to literally take down the barriers and all of those structures that you've discussed. And then put them back, take them out, put them back. So some people may opt not to participate this year.
I really don't understand why it has to be a monthly licensing. I understand why you say it has to be a monthly licensing. I don't understand why it's not something we can decide as a board that we want every year. And it, like anything else in our code, we can rescind it through a proper process if we decide that it's no longer for the public benefit or something that the village wants. But I think it would give the business owners more direction if they knew that this was something they're going to do year in and year out versus it's another temporary fix. I'm saying, do we want this as a temporary fix because of COVID, or do we want this permanently? I'm advocating for permanently. I think it's a value add to the village and the residents. I don't know if I'm a minority in that or not, but I don't understand why we couldn't do that in our code.
Because it's a risk assessment that you have to take on a case-by-case basis. Because it's adverse to the law and there's a gray area.
I disagree. I mean,
it doesn't. Well, it really doesn't matter, I don't think, what the law says, because if the SLA takes away the ability to serve liquor or to be able to have liquor, alcoholic beverages as part of this, I think the economics of it would be very different for most of our restaurants.
I think that's the next step with the SLA, because I don't know if you saw that they have the to-go beverages are now legal for restaurants as long as they're in certain containers. So I think it's just the next step for allowing liquor in parking or parklets.
Possibly, but whether you could consume it on public property is a different thing.
But we could allow it without anyone utilizing it. We could have sidewalk cafe permits and nobody can take a permit out.
I just don't
allowed, nobody uses them.
I think there are too many moving.
We're getting very far afield here. We're here to talk about rates for the parklets. We are getting very far afield of that.
And we can't, I don't think it's practical to say we're going to do this permanently. There are too many moving parts. I, by the way, would be comfortable doing a lower fee than the 250 if there is enough interest in the board to do that. If you'll recall, I was at a lower fee before when we talked about this. I was thinking the 250 would be a number we could all agree on, but if enough people are comfortable with a lower fee, I would go below 250.
Yeah, I mean, last time I proposed 150, and I think I would propose that again. I'd certainly be comfortable at 200, but I think 150 was a reasonable number based on the information we received from the village about the meters and the costs associated with the installation.
Okay, well, 150 has been put forth then, and how many people would be in favor of 150? This is a straw poll. We don't have to lock into it. So that's 1, 2, that's 2 people. Okay. I'm going to keep, that's why we don't like to keep doing this. So I'm going to go one more number and then that's it. So how many people would be in favor of $200? Raise your hand. I would do that. So that's okay.
My decision is based purely on the fact that I haven't seen anything from Jeff about the cost of this. Like I see all these numbers and I throw out numbers and it's like, sure, 200, 250, 150. It's such a small amount. I don't really,
I don't-
that amount doesn't matter to me. It was fulfilling this goal of market value, and the market value number that we came up with was 250. And I don't have all that information in front of me now, so I don't know what the right answer is. And so that's why I'm the actual dollar number.
Yeah.
Is relevant.
Frankly,
It's Jeff's
the
analysis
market-
that matters.
The market value of an outdoor dining experience does not decrease in summer. I mean, if market value is really what we're looking for, it should go up right now for the summer. I'm not advocating for it to go up. I'm just saying, like, the logic is absolutely not there to reduce an outdoor dining experience cost in summer versus winter. Like market
No,
value.
there was for that though, because there was the snow removal point and how that impacts the village and the DPW with the parklets. So there is a difference between the winter and the summer months. But I think this talk about a fair market value is very far astray of what the Constitution requires us as a municipality to consider when we're coming to terms on compensation for the use of public space. And I think that it's something that needs to be adequate, that we think is reasonable and fair. And I think that $200 a month makes sense because the parking spots are not used 100%. You're not getting 100% of the meter fees, and the
Why
meter.
has what's fair changed since December?
It didn't change for me. I voted against.
Well, we're
250.
talking about changing it. So if you want to change it, there must be a rationale for why
No.
it's different.
I don't think the 250 number was the right number to hit on. So I'm not advocating for
That's what we
that
decided.
number being the fair, reasonable value. That's just what 4 other board members had determined.
I want to know, has everybody paid up? Is there anybody still in arrears? Because we know that there were issues even in the winter time with the restaurants not.
We've been paid for the winter months. There's no
Pardon me?
back- there's no back.
Yeah,
There's no backlog, Jeff said.
Can I go back to something you just said? Because
well, hang on though, were we paid for last summer? Because anybody who
Yes.
didn't pay should not have the right.
Yes, we're all caught up.
And that is
Okay.
a condition
Okay, great.
of the applications, is that if you have any back amounts due, then you cannot get a new application. So that would be cleared up first.
Thank you.
Larry, Mike, you wanted to say something?
brought up a point about this fair market value question not necessarily being the thing we should be focused on. And if that's the case, and that's what how I've been assessing this. And so if we are.
I mean, it
We don't have to
can't
be
be
as
the fair
focused on
market. It can't be the fair market value because we did $50 one.
Yeah, but that was an
season.
extraordinary circumstance.
It doesn't matter. It
But
doesn't
they couldn't
matter.
use their inside.
I don't
They
think it
can
matters
use
under
their
the law.
inside now.
I don't think it matters. I mean, I'm not the village lawyer, but I just don't think that matters. I get that was the rationale for the $50. But I think, if you're talking about fair market value, then, you can make an argument that 250 and numbers are fungible. So we can keep playing with the numbers to figure out what market value is or isn't. I think it's, what's the public benefit and what do we want to encourage or not encourage? And I think the goal of the fee is to recover some, if not all of the costs. I don't think we'll ever recover all. It's certainly not to make revenue on it, and it's to create a public benefit for the residents, which I think it does, because during the spring and summer, those parklets are all full up.
Any other comments? Okay, so just so I'm clear, when we go forward on this agreement will go to December 1st or November 30th? Is that what we're talking about?
It was anticipated that it would be until December 31st.
Okay.
Consistent with the sidewalk cafe permits. Mayor, you did receive a sample resolution in case the board did make a decision tonight. I don't know if you received it in your email. I forwarded it again.
I'm sorry, Melissa, but wasn't there a reason that we had, originally it was for October and then we sent it to November, but wasn't there a reason that we didn't initially do it through December? Was it just for the snow? Because I think, maybe there should be, as part of the application, the people should say whether they want them through December or not. Because last year it was only the cookery and the parlor.
That's what they do. They indicate when they're ready to take the park.
No, I'm saying it's part of the application process, what their
Oh, yeah.
intention is going forward. Like
Oh.
if they want it to end in November, or if they plan to like ask for the winter, and I don't know if we're gonna do the winter again, or if they're even interested in doing the winter again. Because I think that the mayor, maybe you remember, or somebody else remembers, but the December was, I think, because of snow, we anticipate snowstorms in December.
Right.
That's why we set the date at the.
In
yeah.
October originally, and then
Yeah.
they asked us to extend it to after Thanksgiving.
We also, there was just not a lot of interest past that
Right, that's what I
from
mean.
the other, so.
I get the rationale for tying it to the sidewalk permit, but maybe we want to, and maybe it won't matter because they'll just, like Laura Lee said, just let us know.
Yeah.
We're ready to get them removed in September, October, or November, but.
Yeah, they'll have to notify the village because we have to take down the barriers and make those arrangements. But I will, well, I'm not gonna get into it now, but nothing. I was gonna talk about the structures that are already up. Just talk to the people.
Okay, so and I guess we can't, because I really want to avoid keep doing this every year, but I guess at this point, we're just, as we put it out before, it just brings up bigger issues. So let's.
Can we at least set the fee for every year, that if next year we decide to do the permit, the parklets, we're not going to revisit the fee, that it's a set fee if we continue the program?
The resolution for consideration would set, in connection with the parklet program, the Board of Trustees hereby establishes the following license fee,
Okay.
which it deems reflective of the fair value of the licensed public space. So that would, therefore, there's no time limit on it.
Right.
It can be changed at any time by the board, but if the board chooses not to change it, then it would remain.
Okay.
You mean like last time?
Well,
No,
last time
was
there was a phrase of winter parklets, which
Oh.
for the vote.
It's not bad.
Melissa actually went back and listened to the video.
I
So
watched.
she is the only
meeting.
person that remembers it accurately at this point.
Well, Liz had it all accurate. in
Oh,
her
I'm
notes.
sure.
Okay, so quite frankly, I've lost track of where we are on this. So are
I
we?
think we're at $200. I think that's what we said was the majority.
I think we
felt
should take
comfortable
about,
with
I agree.
200. Yeah.
Wanted $200.
Okay, all those in favor of $200 as the fair market, the brow, you raise your hand. And I cannot see the board room now, so,
Nicole and Michael have their hands up.
okay, so that passes for $200.
Per space.
Yes, it's per space.
Okay, thank you.
Per
Per month.
Per month.
Thank you. I just want to make sure it's clear this time, so we don't.
Starting what month?
The
April?
first month.
Starting
Starting-
now,
yes.
immediately.
Well, in fairness, they can't start immediately if they have to start putting things up and they don't even have the.
Well, they have to
stuff done.
actually apply the fee for the
Right,
additional
right,
parklets
right,
when
but
they,
I'm
when they
saying, so
submit
it'll
the
Jeff is-
application.
Jeff
more
is
like April
asking ab-
15th.
Jeff
Right.
is asking about the cookery and the parlor, who's already in, has parklets up.
Because
That's
they
why
had
he's
the
asking.
winter parklets. They
And they're
had the
still
winter
up.
parklets.
Yeah.
And they'll have to reapply for a new,
When does this permit go into effect?
it's in effect now. I mean, the
Okay.
fee was $250 before today and now it's $200. So they should be on the website. Everybody can apply and follow all of the information is on the village website for access to anybody. If anybody does not find it on the website, please contact me.
And would you like us to add as a mandate that employees must use 99 seater? Because that's been discussed a few times, but it does not appear in either the memorandum of agreement or in the rules and procedures. So if Mayor, if you could just engage to find out if you want to add that as a condition.
I don't know how we're going to enforce that, but we can talk about it, so.
I mean, can't we just put in this, it's strongly encouraged or strongly recommended? Because I agree. I mean, there's no way to enforce it unless.
You know,
Right.
here's something that I just want to observe. You know, I don't know if it's still up there, but there was a time when at one of the local restaurants up on the wall, they posted parking tickets that their employees got, which struck me as like, you know, a bit of disrespect to the village and the fact that the street parking is not for employees and employees only. So I think it really does make sense to ask people who are a 4-minute walk away from their place of employment to take that 4-minute walk and park in the lot that we have created in order to try to relieve congestion in the parking spots on Broadway and Cedar Street. The people who are going to be at those businesses for 8 or more hours during the day, not moving their cars, should be using a parking lot where you don't have to move your car after 2 hours, rather than get upset that they get tickets when they don't move their car after 2 hours.
And if they apply for the parking business permit, it's a lot cheaper to park down at 99 Cedar than it is to park at a meter on the streets.
Okay, so we could put that into the, I guess, I don't know, in the request, is it in the permit application? Things of that nature.
Will do. We'll add it to the rules and procedures. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the liaison reports. Trustee Patino.
The Conservation Advisory Board had an event this past Sunday, a invasive species removal at the During Preserve. They're going to have a second event Sunday, April 24th from 10 to noon. They welcome volunteers, get out, enjoy the preserve, do a little work, make it a little better for the next person who goes there. I don't believe, I think we haven't had a zoning board meeting since our last board trustees meeting. And I think the various tree groups are sort of generally focused on the next meeting where hopefully we can approve the revised tree code.
Trustee Sullivan.
I didn't attend the Youth Service Council meeting, but I believe they're like underway and still waiting. There were some things with the grant that we had to work out to hire the coordinator. So they're kind of anxiously waiting for that to get finalized so they can really move forward. And hopefully it'll be a vibrant coalition again by the fall, by the beginning of the new school year. And the rec commission was canceled. But I will say that I know the teen camp sold out. And this year they created a junior teen camp, which I thought was really smart. So that's like 5th and 6th graders. And then the 7th and 9th graders have their own teen camp. I'm not sure about the other camps if they sold out yet or not, but it seems like the camp program will be back and vibrant as ever.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Taylor.
I don't have any specific reports from the STF. Our meeting this month was canceled for next month, but there are a lot of activities coming up for Earth Day. They're going to be announced or Earth Month. They're going to be announced in various different ways, which you'll see on the village website and the STF website. As long as I have the floor, I do have one other announcement, which is that the Dobbs Ferry School Foundation is going to hold its gala at the waterfront on Friday, May 20th. So that's something people should put in their calendar. It's always a fun event.
Yes, thank you. Trustee Rosen Asher.
The Human Rights and Diversity Committee has been very busy. They wrote some statements on Ramadan and Arab Heritage Month, and also on Deaf Awareness Month. And I asked you to look for installment 3 because they interviewed me. I think that's the most interesting. There also is going to be a town hall in Greenberg on April 27th on, I just want to get the exact title. I believe it's on Exploring Race, Gender, and Privilege in Greenberg, and that's Wednesday, April 27th at 6 p.m. And one of our members is one of the panelists on that, but it should be an interesting discussion. And I have met with members of the downtown committee, but not with the actual committee itself. So Jessica and I are trying to get a date in the books for that. And I had a meeting with the beautification committee, and then I'm meeting another member for coffee on Friday.
Thank you. Trustee Rosenberg.
The AHRB continues to review projects and approve them. that's, the process goes along, and the prepared project tends to go through as it should. There hasn't been a traffic committee meeting since I last reported out on the traffic committee. So that's my report.
Deputy Mayor Casal.
Planning board's doing the same thing the AHRB is. They're doing their thing. They had been looking at the accessory dwelling unit. They did look at that this week. They all seem to be very much in favor, and they will have comments, or they may have comments for the public hearing when that's set. The Affordable Housing Task Force is working on a couple of communication and information programs, which they'll be coming to the board with eventually. And still working on the ADU law with there was a meeting with Melissa and Lori Lee and to get some more information on it. And Senior Center, again, they're getting their programs together. The Embassy Center is not up and running yet, but if you are interested in any of the programs, please call Abby at the Senior Center at 693-7792 to get some information about what's going on with the senior programs. That's it.
So I want to thank everyone for all their efforts. And if there's no further discussion, is there a motion to close the meeting? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee